So good afternoon, students. My name is Gowtham. I am faculty for Polity, Governance and International Relations. Today we'll try and have a very brief discussion on the strategies that we require to adopt to get a high score in this paper 2 of General Studies Civil Service Mains. Now that you all have taken your preliminary, isn't it? And expecting to clear the preliminary. I heard that a score anywhere between 70 to 75 is supposed to be a safe score owing to the tough paper that we have this year. But anyway, how do we approach paper 2? Now I begin with the assumption that you are all very strong in your foundations, that you are at a level where you have cleared the preliminary or you are about to clear the preliminary. It means your foundations are strong. So we will begin with the assumption that your foundations are strong to begin with, and secondly, we also will begin with the assumption that you have worked on your content, okay, the basics, the content of all the things which are required for this examination. You also have worked out on your current affairs. You must have done that as a part of your preparation for preliminary, because you can't clear the preliminary unless you are strong in current affairs also, isn't it? So you must have worked on your current affairs, you have built on your content, you also have practiced. Have you practiced any answer writing before? Not really. You have practiced answer writing. So you have worked on your presentation, on the ways to structure your answer, and you have done your bit. Okay. So a few things that I'd like to tell you before we get started. The first thing that I want to insist here is that civil services always insists on 3 things in your answers: brevity, clarity and simplicity. 3 things. Brevity, clarity and simplicity. You got to be very crisp in the way you present your answers. You got to be very brief. You cannot write elaborate passages, you understand that, right? You don't have the scope also, because you have a word limit. The primary logic behind giving us a word limit is to impress upon you that your answers have to be crisp and straight. Okay, first. Second is clarity. You got to have clarity of thought. You should be able to very clearly explain your thought. And simplicity. It means that the mains examination doesn't require the usage of very flowery language or very high expression. You require to just convey your message, and for that, whatever the practical language that you require to employ, that would be enough. Okay, so these are the 3 things first you should keep in mind: brevity, clarity and simplicity. Just imprint these 3 words in your mind, because it was UPSC itself which declared that brevity, clarity and simplicity will be awarded with a premium. They will be awarded. They will be rewarded, you know. So try and keep these points in mind first: brevity, clarity and simplicity. And secondly, please also remember that there is a way you must have learnt as a part of your answer writing practice. You must have learnt that you should properly structure your answer. You should have introduction, you should have a body of your answer, you should have conclusion. Introduction should introduce the subject. The body of your answer will actually deal or address the question that is given. And conclusion, of course, should be constructive, it should be able to show a way forward, and conclusion should give solutions. It should seem optimistic, isn't it? You cannot conclude in a very drastic and imbalanced manner. Your conclusion should be balanced, it should be optimistic, it should show a way forward, and it should be positive, it should be constructive. That's how your conclusion should be. You must have learnt all this as a part of your answer writing. And of course, it's also very important that you establish connectivity between the 3 paragraphs, isn't it? Or 3 parts of your answer. So these are the few things that you should keep in mind when you're writing an answer. General instructions for students who want to get a good score. Today's session is primarily about the ways and means of getting a high score in paper 2. That's the entire intention of this session. We'll be discussing very briefly the syllabus. We'll be trying to look at the projections of the syllabus, the coincidental areas. We'll also try and guess some most probable areas that might be coming in the examination this year, in this year's mains. Okay, but before that, some very basic things that I wanted to tell you. Okay, first is, as I told you, brevity, clarity and simplicity. Second thing, as I told you, sticking to the word limit. That's of course very much required, because if you are going to exceed the word limit, you are going to penalize yourself by having to compromise on some other part of your answer, right? Therefore, sticking to the word limit, that's also very important. And the reason that a specific word limit is given is to impress upon you, as I told you, that your answer should be straight, without long, boring narratives. You know, that's the reason. And thirdly, in your answer, apart from having a proper structure, organized structure to your answer, it is also important to establish connectivity between the various parts of your answer, your introduction, body and conclusion. And you also have to take care to order your points well. You know, the more important points will appear in the earlier part of your answer, and the lesser important points or lesser significant points will be in the later part of your answer. So this is how you order your points whenever you write answers. And next thing that I'd like to give you as a part of general instructions is that every question will have a directive. You know that, right? Different words are employed: enumerate, elucidate, explain, comment, attempt a critique, critically examine, or critically analyze, evaluate. Okati gaadu. There are a lot of terms which are used by the examiner. There is a specific reason why so many different types of words are used. These are called as directives of the question. Okay, so each word has its own meaning. Attempt a critique means you're required to look at it from a negative side and criticize a given statement or a given scenario. Critically analyze means you have to present your analysis by looking at the both sides, you know, the positives as well as the negatives. Comment requires you to give your own opinion on a particular issue that is presented before you. Evaluate means you require to evaluate to how far the statement given is true. You have to be a little judgmental there, isn't it? So please remember that each and every question has its own directive. It means each and every answer should have its own direction, isn't it? Please remember that. These are a few things which students tend to ignore whenever they write their answers. Please remember that these are very important. These actually are going to determine in which direction your answer is going to be. If the directive is different and the direction of your answer is different, obviously you will not be getting marks that you are supposed to get, in spite of the fact that you might have proper command or information or knowledge. In spite of that, you might not be able to get good score. So please understand that there are directives for each and every question, and these directives should be very clearly observed by students so that you give a proper direction to your answer. Please remember that also very carefully. Next, we will try and understand what exactly is the requirement of this paper, General Studies paper 2. And I teach General Studies paper 2. As I told you, I have taken classes for polity, for governance, for international relations, and even for issues related to social justice also. And I've had approximately around 20 years of experience as faculty. I was an aspirant for civil services. I went to the interview for civil services in 2004 and 2007. And I've been engaged as faculty. So I was, exposed to the civil services both as an aspirant as well as a faculty. And through all these years, I understand what are the kind of pitfalls that students may face while taking this examination. The type of pitfalls we all may have to face. Sometimes students lose out on adopting the right approach. Sometimes students may not have proper content. Sometimes students might not understand the drift of the question. Sometimes students might not have done their work on current events or current issues. Each of this is a pitfall. All of them should be addressed, isn't it? Now, whatever the little time that you have as a part of your preparation for the mains examination, what you got to do is do the best. Do your best. Right? The examination is not very far away, isn't it? When we had taken the examination, there used to be approximately around 5 months, 4.5 to 5 months between preliminary and mains. That was a sufficient time, but now you don't have a lot of time. So you got to hurry your preparation. You got to hurry, you got to make proper choices, you got to sacrifice some segments if they are required, you got to identify core areas, thrust areas for the examination. You got to do all these things. Now looking at this paper, General Studies paper 2, I am very sure that you know the blueprint of the examination as far as paper 2 is concerned. You know that paper 2 consists of 4 segments, isn't it? It consists of 4 segments. Polity, governance, constitution, of course, is a part of polity only. Social justice, issues related to social justice and international relations. These are the 4 or 5 segments that you have in this paper too. Now please remember that in this, Indian polity accounts for approximately 50% of the marks, more or less. So out of 250 marks allotted for General Studies paper 2, Indian polity accounts for around 125 marks. Okay, polity and constitution together, okay, account for around 125 marks. Therefore, 50% of the marks in this paper are allotted to Indian polity and constitution. So lion's share. Please remember that there is no other segment in entire General Studies which has so much of weightage as Indian polity has. So Indian polity has lion's share of marks, 125 marks, isn't it? Straight away. So much of emphasis is there on Indian polity. It means that prospective administrators will require to be very strong in Indian polity. The message is very clear. Okay, you got to be strong in Indian polity. 125 marks. Okay, half of one complete General Studies paper, right? And governance accounts for anywhere between 20 to 30 marks. Social justice anywhere between 20 to 30 marks. Of course, this varies. That varies from time to time. And international relations. International relations accounts for around 50 to 60 marks, roughly. Okay. So this usually is the breakup, right? Sometimes this can be 40 and this can be 30, right? But more or less this is the breakup for this scheme. So a total of 20 questions are given. You know that 10 questions are for 10 marks, for which you are required to write 150 words answers, and there are 10 other questions for which you are required to write 250 words answers, and each question carries 15 marks, right? So you have 10 marker questions and you have 15 marker questions, right? So total of 20 answers you are supposed to write within 3 hours. Okay, so if you can break it up, if we break it up, I did a little calculation here on how much of time you have for a 10 marker question and for a 15 marker question. Roughly you can allot around 7 minutes for a 10 marker question and around 11 minutes for a 15 marks question. Okay, so let's assume that you're supposed to write 250 words in 11 minutes. You got to understand the question, you got to focus upon the question, obviously, understand the drift of the question, and then you should structure your answer mentally, and then you should start writing your answer, and you should be able to complete the entire answer within 11 minutes, which you should be able to do comfortably if you have practiced writing answers. Okay, if you have not practiced writing answers, this is the time for you to start. At least 3 to 4 answers each day per paper. Okay, per paper, ante around 10 answers at least for General Studies you should practice, because see, as far as this examination is concerned, acquiring content is one aspect, presenting is another aspect. You will see very soon why I am saying this. When you look at the questions which are given in the examination, you realize that there are a lot of questions which not only test your command of knowledge, a lot of questions also test how well you are able to apply your knowledge to the given scenario. Particularly questions related to Indian polity and governance, you will see that you should be able to apply your knowledge to a given scenario to come out with an appropriate answer. Okay, you'll see that. So you're required to reflect on the question properly. You're required to understand the directives, the keywords, and then you're supposed to write your answers. Therefore, please remember that as soon as you look at the question, మనకి తెలిసిన ఒక 2-3 terms కనిపించగానే don't jump to write your answers. Reflect on the question. If it is required, spend at least 1 complete minute on the question. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Better write a question with lesser words, properly directed at the question, rather than write a complete answer with more than the words required, which is completely misdirected, isn't it? So what you're required to do is reflect on the question first. Okay, reflect on the question and take 1 minute. It doesn't matter really. Structure your answer mentally and then start writing your answers. Okay, so this is the blueprint of this paper, right? So many segments, allotment of marks, word limit, and then of course the time that you're required to give to each of these questions. So keep this in mind. That's also very important. Now trying to understand the ways and means. We'll look at the syllabus a little later. Before that, we just, as I told you, you're trying to focus upon how well we can approach the paper so that we can extract very, very good marks from this paper. Let's say 130, 135. It should not be an impossible task, because there are people who are able to realize this score from General Studies paper 2. Okay, there are people who are able to do it, so we also can do it. So it's not an impossible task, provided our approach is right. We do the things that they are supposed to be done in the right manner. Okay, very soon you'll be in the maze of acquiring more and more knowledge, more and more information. You'll be hankering after material, but before that, just cool down, slow down, and start thinking about how to organize the information properly, how to put the information properly. What is it that you have to focus upon? How you should go about your task. Then you do your thing. But before that, slow down, cool down, think, reflect, and then you make your move. So what we'll do today is we'll try to focus upon the last 2 years of question papers in General Studies paper 2, 2024 and 2025, to understand first the difficulty level. What is the difficulty level of this paper? 2, we'll also try to understand the demands of the paper. What is it that a candidate requires to do to get a good score, a high score in this type of paper? 3, we'll also see if there is a trend that we can discover. Is there repetition? Is there more and more emphasis on syllabus, explicitly mentioned topics in the syllabus? Or is there more emphasis on incidental and associated topics which do not appear explicitly in the syllabus? We'll also try and see what are the focus areas. What are the focus areas? We'll also try and see how much of paper is oriented towards current issues and current developments. These are the things that we'll try and understand by looking at the 2024 and 25 papers. Okay, first, what I have gathered, we'll look at the questions very soon. We'll also see how we are going to answer these questions, how we should answer these questions to get good scores. We'll also look at that. But before that, my analysis of 2024 and 2025 papers shows that the difficulty level of the papers is moderate to difficult. Okay, there are some questions which are easy, in fact. Obviously, every question paper will have some easy questions, isn't it? But the major chunk of the questions in 2024 and 2025 General Studies paper 2 shows a moderate to a little difficulty, not too difficult. There are obviously also going to be shockers, and questions which suddenly out of nowhere appear in the question paper. Atlandi shockers untayi. Okay, easy questions kuda untayi, shockers kuda untayi, 1 or 2 shockers kuda untayi. But majority part of the question paper is anywhere between moderate to slight difficulty. So it's not an unmanageable paper, it's a manageable paper, and it is a type of paper. Both 2024 and 25 papers are those which give scope for candidates to secure in excess of 125 marks. So this is a paper which can be scored off. This is a paper from which you can expect to score more marks. That's the first thing. Second, these papers 2024-25, they are testing a few aspects of candidates' expertise. First, they are testing a candidate's conceptual clarity. How clear he is in his concepts. That's the first thing which is being tested. A lot of concepts are given in these papers which requires the students to have proper conceptual clarity. For example, in 2024, one nation, one election principle was given. One nation, one election principle was given. And there's a concept behind one nation, one election. What's the idea? Why do you think that this country requires one election for both the parliament as well as state legislatures? What's the problem if there are going to be elections which are separate for parliament and for state legislatures? Is there any problem with that? What is the concept behind the idea of one nation, one election? It is this conceptual clarity which students should attain. That is being tested. Okay. Secondly, this papers, 2024 and 25 papers, are also testing the analytical ability of students. Analytical ability, how well they are able to analyze a particular given question. For example, there was this question: growth of the cabinet system has practically resulted in marginalization of parliamentary supremacy. Growth of cabinet system. Growth of cabinet system has marginalized parliamentary supremacy. What do you think? Do you think that the growth of cabinet system in this country has marginalized parliamentary supremacy? You think it's true? What do you think? To some extent. Can you tell me what do you mean by cabinet system? Okay. Yes. So, instead of the Council of Ministers, there is a group of closely knit ministers who hold the most important and critical portfolios, who collectively take decisions for the government. That's called as the cabinet system. We have adopted the cabinet system from England. In England, though there is a cabinet system, there is still the principle of parliamentary supremacy entrenched. Okay. In England, though cabinet system is very clearly established, parliamentary supremacy continues to exist there. In England, parliament is supreme. You know that, right? Parliament is in fact sovereign in England. It can take any decisions. It can make any law. There is no restriction on law making or constitutional amendment power of parliament in England. Therefore, parliament is supreme. Though there is a cabinet system in England, it did not in any way affect parliamentary supremacy. So, how do you think that it has affected parliamentary supremacy in India? The growth of cabinet system, how do you think it has affected parliamentary supremacy? Any idea? So, you got to first understand the concept. You got to be able to analyze how the growth of cabinet system had in fact adversely affected the functioning of parliament and threatened parliamentary supremacy. This is what's called as analytical ability to analyze, right? Please remember, the question appears very harmless on the face of it. Apparently, the question is very simple, but once you start writing an answer, properly addressing the question is the key. That's the reason why I told you, before you start writing your answers, reflect on the question for 1 complete minute. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you write a few words less, but at least you will write the words which are relevant and which properly address the question. Chala mandi students, they feel the pressure of the time and they rush their answers. Question ni half ardham cheskuni, they start writing their answers, which is very, very dangerous. It can actually put you on the wrong track. Got it? And that's the reason why I'm asking you to spend a little more time on the questions. Thirdly, as I have understood from 2024 and 2025 papers, these papers are also testing a candidate's application-based understanding. How well he is able to apply his knowledge. For example, there was this question that was given in 2024 paper. Examine the role of local bodies in providing good governance. Very simple, you know. Examine the role of local bodies in providing good governance at local level and bring out the pros and cons of merging rural local bodies with urban local bodies. Okay, what is their role? What is the role of local bodies in good governance? What is the role of local bodies? Do local bodies have a big role in assuring good governance? What do you think? You know what is good governance, right? Good governance is governance which is based on certain principles like decentralization, consensus oriented, democratic governance, rule of law, effective and responsive governance. ఇలాంటి క్వాలిటీస్ ఉండే గవర్నెన్స్ని గుడ్ గవర్నెన్స్ అని చెప్పి అంటారు కదా. హౌ డూ లోకల్ బాడీస్ కాంట్రిబ్యూట్ టు రియలైజ్ గుడ్ గవర్నెన్స్? How? What do you mean by what is the purpose of local bodies? What is the purpose of local bodies? The panchayats and municipalities. What is their purpose? ఎందుకోసం అవి ఏర్పాటు చేయబడుతున్నాయి? So local bodies are there not only in villages, madam, even in urban areas also. We have municipalities, isn't it? In rural areas we have panchayats. In urban areas we have municipalities. All of them are local bodies. Yeah, madam is right. To tackle the problems at the local level only. Local bodies actually empower the communities at the grassroots to identify and to realize solutions for their problems. It is empowering the grassroots, isn't it? Democratic decentralization. It enhances participation. It promotes accountability. It promotes transparency. It promotes democratic governance. All the qualities of good governance can be realized through these local bodies, isn't it? Now he is asking us to apply this knowledge of good governance to understand the pros and cons of merging the urban and rural local bodies. You know, this is what's called as application of knowledge. So the examination, the papers that I've looked at, 2024 and 25, require candidates to properly apply their knowledge also. You know what is the meaning of merging urban and local bodies, urban and rural local bodies? You know, in large urban agglomerates, we have fringe areas, isn't it? As urban sprawl or spreading of an urban area takes place, the fringe areas are incorporated into the urban areas, where we have a combination of several panchayats falling within an urban region, isn't it? For example, earlier, before we had this greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation was there. It was an urban local body, and surrounding Hyderabad there were a series of rural local bodies, panchayats. You know, we had panchayats, you know, Shamshabad was a panchayat. Okay, yeah, the fringe areas of the urban area were all panchayats. Slowly all these panchayats were integrated and a greater Hyderabad is created. This is merging the urban and rural local bodies. What will be the advantage of this? The advantage of this would be that there would be better spatial planning. There would be better provision of facilities for both the urban as well as the rural areas. There can be better planning of urban sprawl. As urban area is spreading towards the adjoining fringe areas, there can be better planning, isn't it? Merging of this urban and rural local bodies can help ease pressure on the urban region to provide services, isn't it? All this can take place. So there are advantages, distinct advantages of this. So he is asking us to apply our knowledge of good governance to understand the pros and cons of merging rural and urban areas. This is what's called as applying your knowledge and understanding, okay, to analyze a given scenario. These are tested, as I've seen in the papers in 2024 and 25. These are actually tested. Okay, next, also I've seen that the 2024 and 25 papers have had questions which require candidates to come out with their own opinions, with their own comments, with their own judgments about given scenarios. Okay, for example, Do you support a law relating to DNA testing of child in womb of a mother to establish paternity? This was a question that was asked in 2024. He's asking us to take a stand on this. What is your opinion? What is your idea about conducting DNA test of a fetus, that is a child in mother's womb, to ascertain paternity? Do you think it is supported? What do you think? Yeah? So here you are being asked to take a stand. Your opinion is being asked here, right? So itlanti questions ki you require to have content, obviously. You require to have a proper understanding of what was the Supreme Court's stand on this issue. Any idea? Did the Supreme Court support this? No, didn't support this. Do you think conducting DNA in India for fetus in mother's womb is legally permissible or not? It's possible, madam. It's legally possible. It's called as amniocentesis. Okay? It's actually possible. Medically, it is possible for conducting DNA test for fetus also. They extract some stem cells and they do a DNA test. Okay? So it's possible medically. That's not our domain. Our domain is whether you are okay with this or not. That's the question. Okay? See, firstly, we should have the idea, right? Article 21. What is Article 21? No person should be deprived of his right to life and personal liberty except to the procedure established by law. Article 21 provides for right to life. In the case Puttaswamy, Justice Puttaswamy versus the Union of India case, Supreme Court declared that right to privacy is a part of fundamental right. It is a part of individual's right to life and personal liberty. So, if DNA is being conducted on a fetus, isn't it an invasion of a mother's right to privacy? And if it is to ascertain the paternity, isn't it an invasion of father's right to privacy? If right to privacy is declared as a part of right to life, Supreme Court held that right to bodily integrity and right against invasive techniques or diagnostics is a violation of right to life under Article 21. You know, Supreme Court had been very clear on this, that there cannot be any invasion of individuals' right to privacy, even in the form of conducting a DNA test. It shows that you cannot use DNA testing of fetus indiscriminately for proving paternity. You cannot do that. Supreme Court had been very clear. Okay? So it is this that you'll have to properly first understand. What had been the court's stand? The court had made it very clear that, see, you cannot conduct DNA tests. You cannot conduct DNA tests on mere suspicion of infidelity. అమ్మాయి మీద అనుమానంతో DNA టెస్ట్ చేసి పెటర్నిటీని ప్రూవ్ చేయడం కోసం చేయకండి. It should be done only as a last resort after exhausting all other alternatives. 2. It cannot be done to prove roving paternity or as a fishing expedition to try and find out, to set at rest a person's suspicion. It can be done only if there is a credible evidence of infidelity against the woman. Only when there is a credible evidence, then you do it. అంతేగాని నీ సస్పిషన్స్ కోసం నువ్వు ఇలాంటి టెస్ట్ చేయకూడదు. It would amount to violation of a person's right to life and personal liberty. It is a violation of child's bodily integrity because we don't know what kind of medical complications can come because of the conduct of such a test. So it is a violation of child's bodily integrity also. And that's how Supreme Court had taken a stand. So here, why I am telling you this is that there are questions in the examination which require you to express your opinions as well. So please remember that the questions that are given in this paper show that you require to have a proper understanding of the issues. Actually, don't think that it's very complicated. We can actually try and make the preparation simpler also. We'll do that slowly. But first let us try to understand the demands of the paper. Okay? So conceptual clarity and analytical ability and ability to apply knowledge and understanding to the given scenarios, ability to make judgments sometimes as and when required by the question. Okay? There was another question also, I remember. In 2025, has the Supreme Court of India become the world's most powerful Supreme Court? Has the Supreme Court of India become the world's most powerful Supreme Court? You know? Particularly the question was given with reference to public interest litigation. After public interest litigation is being entertained, has the Supreme Court of this country become the world's most powerful Supreme Court or not? That was the question given. So you require to give your opinion on this. Do you think the Supreme Court of this country is the world's most powerful Supreme Court? What do you think? You think so? It's not enough if you say yes, right? How do you justify it? How do you justify your contention that Supreme Court of India is the world's most powerful Supreme Court? How? There are certain powers which the Supreme Court of India enjoys, which are exceptional, which are not enjoyed by other courts in other countries. Particularly, please remember that we make a comparison between the Supreme Court of India and the Supreme Court of England and Supreme Court of America. That's the comparison which we normally make to conclude that the Supreme Court of this country is the world's most powerful Supreme Court. The Indian Supreme Court has judicial review. American Supreme Court also has judicial review. But the Supreme Court in England has no judicial review. 2. Supreme Court of India is the highest court of appeal. The Supreme Court of America is not the highest court of appeal. The Supreme Court of England is not the highest court of appeal. 3. The Supreme Court of India has the most extensive powers for punishing on the grounds of contempt of court. Most extensive. 4. The Supreme Court of India is a federal court. The American Supreme Court also is a federal court, but the English Supreme Court is not a federal court. 5. The Supreme Court of India can entertain appeals over central laws as well as state laws. The American Supreme Court has no jurisdiction over the judgments given by High Court for state laws. ఇట్లా మనం కంపారిజన్ చేస్తే యూ రియలైజ్ దట్ ద సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా ఇస్ ద వరల్డ్స్ మోస్ట్ పవర్ఫుల్ సుప్రీం కోర్ట్. ఇన్ ఫ్యాక్ట్ ఆఫ్టర్ సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ బిగాన్ టు ఎంటర్టైన్ పబ్లిక్ ఇంట్రెస్ట్ లిటిగేషన్స్, సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ had become very, very powerful. So much so that today Supreme Court of India is being called, you know what? Continuous Constitutional Convention. You know, primarily because of the additions of the contributions that Supreme Court is making towards the growth of Indian Constitution, introducing new doctrines, liberally expanding the constitutional provisions like right to life. You know, right to life was interpreted by Supreme Court to include so many other implicit rights, isn't it? Right to clean environment, right to livelihood, right to shelter, right to speedy justice, right to education, right to information, what not, right to privacy, right to one's own maternal choices, right to one's own sexual preferences, right to clean environment. So many other rights were identified by Supreme Court as rights which are implicit, which are required for a healthy living by individuals as a part of right to life, you know. So Supreme Court is contributing hugely towards the development of the growth of Indian Constitution, and that's the reason why Supreme Court of India is described as continuous constitutional convention. You know, these are questions in which you are required to give your opinions, your own comments, your own judgments, your own evaluation of a given statement. Itlanti questions ki you require to be very balanced in your answers. Okay, right? So these are what I've observed as a part of the demands of the question paper. Okay, remember, this is a civil service examination. I don't mean to scare you. All these things are manageable in the given time, with the content that you've already developed, with the practice of answers that you've already made. You can get that additional edge through which you can get 130 marks in this paper. As I told you, this is possible. If you scientifically approach this paper, this is very much possible. Trust yourself on this first. Okay. Next, finally, this paper also requires that candidates are, are completely updated. You're required to be updated, of course. That's required for this exam. You cannot think of civil service examination without thinking about current affairs, isn't it? You're required to be very strong in current affairs. If somebody asks me to describe civil services, I'll tell that there are two things which are at the very heart of the civil services examination. First is candidates required to adopt interdisciplinary approach. And secondly, candidate requires to be contemporaneous. Candidate requires to be current, update. These are the two fundamental requirements of anybody who wants to take this examination. Okay? And this paper is no exception to that rule. You're required to be update. You're required to be strong in current affairs. So this paper also requires that. Okay? So these very broadly are the demands of the examination. Demands of this paper. Okay? Conceptual clarity, analytical ability. You got to apply your knowledge to the given scenarios. You are supposed to make judgments and evaluate the scenarios which are presented to you. You are required to be update. Okay? All these things are there. They are all inbuilt within the scheme of paper 2, Civil Services General Studies Mains. Okay? This is my conclusion and my understanding of the question papers in 2024 and 2025. Okay? Till here, do you have any doubts? Okay? Till here, right? So please understand the demands of the examination first. Demands of the paper first. Okay? Now, apart from this, please also understand that UPSC is synonymous to unpredictability. You know that, right? It's unpredictable. And this unpredictability is also a feature of paper 2. Okay? Sometimes questions are very current oriented. Sometimes questions test a candidate's thorough, conventional and background knowledge. Okay? Sometimes the questions are fact-based, purely fact-based questions. Okay? So there are various ways in which the questions are being approached by the civil services. Now, how do we really prepare for this unpredictability? Okay? What do? There are only two things which you can do and hope for the best. First is be strong in your conventional areas, and two, be strong in current affairs. Ante. And leave everything else to the Union Public Service Commission. Okay? This is what you can do. This is what is in your hands. Okay? Right. A little more effort, if you can put in, that would be trying to attempt writing answers to some questions which are slightly tricky. That's what you can do. Okay? As a part of test series or whatever, you can try and attempt questions which are slightly tricky, so that even if there is a little unpredictability, uncertainty in the way questions are asked, you can, keep up with that. Please remember, if the question is tricky and if the question paper is uncertain and unpredictable, it is so for everybody, not just you. But the point is that you will be well prepared for such a scenario if you practice some of such tricky questions at the moment. Okay? So this is what you do, right? And one more thing that I'd like to mention to you as a part of this initial general instructions is finish each line of the syllabus. Whatever is there given explicitly in the syllabus, stick to that and finish each line of the syllabus. We'll very soon discuss how to interpret the syllabus and how to identify areas. Okay? Because you will see that in 2000, I just looked at two papers, 2024 and 25. 2024 and 25. And you'll realize that the questions in fact were repeating. In 2024 there was a question on tribunals, in 2025 there was a question on tribunals. In 2024 there was a question on center-state relations, in 2025 there was a question on center-state relations. When I looked at the paper in 2023 and 24, I also saw repetitions. Okay, so what you should do initially now is thoroughly look at the 2024 and 25 paper, identify all the incidental areas and read them thoroughly. Please do that. Okay, that should be your first step. 2024 and 2025 paper, because I'll show you very soon how much of repetition was there in the past year's paper and this the following year's paper. ఎంత రిపిటేషన్ మీకే చూపిస్తాను, త్వరలో చూపిస్తాను. ఓకే, అండ్ సో రీడ్ each and every part of the syllabus properly. Okay, next, if possible, wherever it is possible, okay, you can use diagrammatic representation. If you're good at drawing, practice world map. Okay, actually it's easy, madam. You can practice world map and you can actually reproduce that map. Students do that, and there are some toppers who have done that and got very, very good scores in international relations, particularly in international relations. Okay, even in segments like governance, if you can use diagrammatic representation in the form of flow charts, okay, you can actually do that. Of course, the catch here is never leave a diagram without a proper explanation. Okay, a diagram should always be followed with at least a simplistic, a single sentence explanation what it represents. Okay, so if at all there is a scope for you, okay, try and produce your answer in the form of diagrammatic representation. Particularly in areas like governance, you can do that. Okay, in international relations also you can use flow charts. In international relations you can use maps also, if you're good at that. Okay, try to incorporate. These are value additions to your answer. Okay, I kept telling you a few minutes earlier that you should not make the examiner search for points in your answer. You should properly order your points, isn't it? You should properly order your points. Examiner should be very clearly able to see what are the points that you have mentioned. Your points should be visible to the examiner properly. Visibility of your points. Okay, that's also very important. These are the ways and means through which you can, I'm just telling you, I told you, right, I began with the lecture by saying that I assume that you have built your content because you're going to clear the preliminary ante you're strong. You're strong in current affairs, you're strong in your content. The only thing is getting that edge, avoiding pitfalls and getting a high score. That's the target. That's what we are here for. That's what we are trying to accomplish here, isn't it? Okay, so these are the few things that you first keep in mind. Understanding the directives of the question, structuring your answer properly, ordering your points. Okay, all these things. We'll look at specific areas later. Indian polity, governance, how we are supposed to reach out to these segments. We'll look at them very soon. Okay, but these are some general instructions which I wanted to give you. Okay, read and finish reading the entire syllabus of paper 2 general studies. Syllabus ni first identify cheyandi, raskondi. Syllabus loni prati okka point ni chadavandi, gather some content. Okay, gather some content on every topic which is there in the syllabus, explicitly in the syllabus, because syllabus lo unna explicit points nunchi manaki questions vastunayandi. Getting questions from the explicit points in the syllabus. So gather some content, prepare some notes. ఈ టాపిక్ వస్తే రెడీమేడ్గా మీ దగ్గర రాయడానికి ఒక 150 వర్డ్స్ అన్న ఉండాలి ఫస్ట్. దట్స్ ద ఫస్ట్ థింగ్. ఓకే, సో డూ దాట్. ఓకే, లీవ్ నో పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద సిలబస్ అన్టర్న్డ్. Okay, because he's going to give you from that. For example, there is this topic called constitutional bodies. Okay, in 2023 he gave a question on public service commissions. In 2024 he gave a question on CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. In 2025 he gave a question on Attorney General of India. See, so constitutional bodies is a topic. What are the various constitutional bodies that you come across? Have some knowledge, some information about them ready-made with you. Okay, so that's the reason why I said read every part of the syllabus. Okay, so keep the syllabus as your guide. Keep the syllabus as your guide and read every part of it. That's the first step. దాని మీద ఇంకా బిల్డ్ చేసుకోవాలండి. సిలబస్ నుంచి మళ్ళీ మనం కొన్ని ప్రొజెక్షన్స్ ఉంటాయి, అవి కూడా మనం రీచ్ కావాలి. బట్ దిస్ ఇస్ ద ఫస్ట్ స్టెప్. ఓకే, ఆర్ యు ఆల్ విత్ మీ? యా, Any doubts till here? Okay. Paper 2, Indian polity. General studies లో ఉన్న అన్ని సెగ్మెంట్స్లోకెల్లా the largest weightage is given to Indian polity. This is that part of the syllabus in which you have to reach out and get the marks. That part of syllabus which you'll have to reach out and get the marks. It's possible. It's possible, provided you stick to the thing that I said, conceptual clarity. What do you mean by democracy? Anybody can tell me what do you understand by democracy? Democracy. It's a concept. I am very sure you can write 20 pages on democracy. But can you tell me in 20 words, what do you understand by democracy? The essence of democracy. The very essence of democracy. Elections, then accountability. Elections and accountability. Is that it? Accountability is ensured by the people with the power to replace the government through elections. So elections and accountability actually are both same only. Accountability of the men in power is ensured through the people's choice to replace the government through elections. Okay, but that's not the essence of democracy, sir. See, this is what's called as conceptual clarity. Okay, now if you look at the examination, you'll realize that almost in every question your concept is tested. It is your ability to give that answer in the crisp and easiest manner which will give you the path towards attaining high scores in Indian polity. Okay, you will see the questions very soon. Very soon we'll discuss about 2 or 3 questions and see how we are supposed to deal with the questions. You'll then understand how to go about writing answers for these questions. మీరు ఆల్రెడీ టెస్ట్ సిరీస్ అవి అటెండ్ అయ్యారన్నారు కదా, ఆన్సర్స్ ప్రాక్టీస్ చేశారన్నారు కదా. ఓకే, మీకు ఎక్కడ చెప్పలేదా ఇండియన్ పాలిటీలో మీరు కాన్సెప్ట్ని మీరు క్లియర్గా మీరు రాయవలసి ఉంటుంది ఆన్సర్లో అని చెప్పే ఉంటారు కదా కదా, రైట్? సో యాజ్ ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ, ఇఫ్ ఎట్ ఆల్ అండ్ వేర్ ఎవర్ పాసిబుల్, రైట్, ట్రై టు మేక్ యూస్ ఆఫ్ diagrammatic representation, because through diagrammatic representation you can communicate more in less words and in less time. You got me, right? ఒక ఫ్లో చార్ట్ వేసారనుకోండి, ఆ ఫ్లో చార్ట్ని మీరు ఒక పారాగ్రాఫ్లో ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేయడానికి మీరు ఒక 100 వర్డ్స్ యూజ్ చేయాల్సి వస్తే, అదే 100 వర్డ్స్ బదులు ఒక ఫ్లో చార్ట్ వేస్తే within 25 to 30 words you will be able to communicate whatever you want to tell him. You can also show to the examiner that you are capable of putting the words into a diagrammatic presentation. That's actually a skill. You know that, right? It's a skill. It's a skill. You can showcase your skill to do that also. Okay? That actually impresses. That actually impresses the examiner, because he need not search for the points. He knows that you know, and he also knows your skill to present your ideas in a diagrammatic manner. That is impressive. It will get you scores. అంటే ఎక్కడ పడితే వేసామని కాదండి. ఓకే, wherever your answer requires a proper evaluation and judgment, probably you might have to write paragraphs. Okay, but wherever it is possible, wherever there are 5 or 6 points that you might have to enumerate, there you can just draw a small flow chart and show it to the examiner. Okay, right? So if possible, wherever possible, try to incorporate diagrammatic representation of your answer, if possible. That's a very, very good thing to do, particularly for governance and for international relations. If it is possible, please do that. That will fetch you good scores. Okay, so this is the analysis of the papers in 2024-25, the various types of questions. These are the demands of the examination, what you are required to do. Okay, now we'll first look at Indian polity. Okay, 125 marks, obviously. A very important segment. Okay. First, please understand that the questions on Indian polity, they require candidate to first have an understanding of the concept, whatever it is. Okay. Secondly, they also require candidate to have proper information about the basic elements of what he is writing about. For example, if you are writing an answer about parliamentary system in India, can you tell me, there is one article which is considered to be at the very heart of Indian parliamentary system. Can you tell me which is that article? One article which is considered to be at the very heart of the parliamentary system in India. What do you mean by a parliamentary form of government to begin with? Where the executive is accountable to the legislature. So, based on the relationship between legislature and executive, you have a type of government called parliamentary system in which the executive is responsible for all its acts of omission and commission to the legislature. So, there is one article which explains this relationship. Article 75, clause 3. It is this article which is at the very heart of the parliamentary system in India. ఈ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఏదైతే ఉందో అది మీ ఆన్సర్లో కనిపించాలి. వాట్ ఓకే. సో వితౌట్ మెన్షనింగ్ దట్ స్పెసిఫిక్ ఆర్టికల్, వితౌట్ So, without mentioning that article, your answer will actually not carry that basis. Followed me? So, please ensure that అవును రావట్లేదుగా పీపీటీ. ఏం చేయాలి? Okay, so Indian polity, as I told you, the most important, of course, your answer should contain those fundamental facts which are required. Okay. If you are not able to mention these basic points in your answer can never look impressive. Okay, right? If you are not writing about Article 75 clause 3, which is at the very heart of parliamentary system, then answer obviously is not proper, isn't it? I mean, there is something which is missing in the answer, and that's the reason why you got to be careful. And how do you build this? Very simple. Suppose you are studying parliamentary system, just take a note of 2 or 3 articles, have it in the form of a repository, a database ready at your disposal for every topic. Please do that. It won't take much time. It really won't take much time. For example, if you're asked to write about the President of India, okay, the nature of executive powers of the President of India with specific reference to the relationship between the President of India and the Council of Ministers. Suppose the question is given like this. Okay, here the nature of presidential executive powers are clearly mentioned in one article, Article 53. The union executive powers are vested in the President of India, who shall exercise these powers either directly by himself or through deputies or officers subordinate to him. It is this article which is at the very heart of the executive powers of the President of India. Idi mee answer lo kanpinchali. Okay, so what do? You prepare a repository of all those basic and fundamental things that should be present in your answer. Correct? Okay, you make a repository of important articles, case laws, okay, then important judgments given by courts, and committees and their reports. For example, if you're writing an answer on center-state relations, it would be very impressive in your answer to refer to the Sarkariya Committee's recommendations, isn't it? And okay, so the thing that I really want to impress upon you is this. So when you're preparing for Indian polity, for all the important areas, for all the areas which are required, for all the areas which are, let's say, thrust areas, which are very important, which are likely to come in the examination, you please prepare a repository of all the current information, relevant articles, current information, and then judgments, case laws, the recommendations of committees, all the things which you can use. Okay, a small brief write-up on important topics, on center-state relations. What is it that you require to remember? For example, when we say center-state financial relations, what are the things that you require to remember? Okay, when you're writing an answer on, let's say, the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy, okay, what are the things that you require to keep in mind? All those things which are thrust areas, for that you please maintain a repository of information. That's very, very important. 1. Okay. 2. Indian polity. If at all there is a scope for you to use jargon, use it. Okay. For example, use terms like judicial restraint. Okay. Use terms like checks and balances. Okay. These are terms. I assume you understand the meaning of these terms, isn't it? Okay. Judicial restraint, the scheme of checks and balances. ఇట్లాంటి కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఏమైతే ఉన్నాయో, జార్గన్ ఏమైతే ఉంటుందో, try to employ this jargon wherever it is possible. Okay, that makes your answer very impressive. It lends a little more technical angle to your answer if you are able to use this jargon. So please use this jargon. Don't be worried. I mean, you might be coming across other opinions, right? But usage of this, I'm not saying that you should use very high language. I told you language should be simple. But wherever it is possible, use jargon. Okay, for example, judicial activism. You know what is judicial activism, right? Must have heard that term before. Judicial activism. Can somebody tell me? I mean, be very brief, as I told you. Be very simple. And be very clear, straight, crisp in your answer. ఇట్లాంటివి మనకి డిఫైన్ చేయడానికి కష్టంగా ఉన్నప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తారంటే, మీరు ఆల్రెడీ వీటి మీద ఒక రైటప్ని తయారు చేసి పెట్టుకోండి. దట్స్ ద కీ. ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ కదా, ఇట్ ఈస్ దిస్ విచ్ లెండ్స్ క్రెడిబిలిటీ టు యువర్ ఆన్సర్. Judicial activism, you must have heard that term at least 100 times by now. Okay, can you very crisply tell me what you understand by judicial activism? Yes. దాన్ని జ్యుడిషియల్ ఓవర్ రీచ్ అంటారు సార్. మీరు చెప్పింది గోయింగ్ బియాండ్ ఇట్స్ ట్రెడిషనల్ జ్యూరిస్డిక్షన్ అండ్ రీచింగ్ అవుట్ అండ్ స్టెప్పింగ్ ఇన్ టు ద డొమైన్స్ ఆఫ్ అదర్ గవర్నమెంటల్ ఆర్గన్స్ చూసారా, దాన్ని జ్యుడిషియల్ ఓవర్ రీచ్ అంటారు. జ్యుడిషియల్ యాక్టివిజంకి జ్యుడిషియల్ ఓవర్ రీచ్కి చాలా తేడా ఉంది. సి దిస్ ఈజ్ వాట్ ఐఎమ్ సెయింగ్. వెనెవర్ యూ కమ్ అక్రాస్ దీస్ టర్మ్స్, ఆ టర్మ్స్ మీద ఒక 2 minutes స్పెండ్ చేశారనుకోండి, గూగుల్ చేయండి, వచ్చేస్తుంది మీకు ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్. 2 minutes స్పెండ్ చేశారనుకోండి, యూ గెట్ ద ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ దట్ యూ రిక్వైర్. It's easy. Indian polity requires you to properly define and clarify your terms. Got it? Okay. Examiner will see whether your answer is clear or not, whether you understand the concept యు ఆర్ రైటింగ్ అబౌట్ ఆర్ నాట్. నేను చెప్పాను కదా మీకు, ఇవన్నీ కూడా వినడానికి చాలా కష్టంగా అనిపిస్తాయి. బట్ యూ స్పెండ్ 2 minutes ఆన్ దిస్, విల్ గెట్ క్లారిటీ. Judicial activism, assuming new and unconventional responsibilities by the judiciary, acting as an agent of socio-economic change, is called judicial activism. చూసారా, క్రిస్ప్ డెఫినేషన్, కళ్ళు మూసుకుని రాసేయాలి ఎగ్జామినేషన్లో. ఓకే, ఇట్లా కొన్ని టర్మ్స్ విచ్ ఆర్ వెరీ పాపులర్, గెట్ టు నో దీస్ టర్మ్స్, ప్రాపర్లీ డిఫైన్ దీస్ టర్మ్స్. ఓకే, గాట్ ఇట్, రైట్? దిస్ ఈజ్ వన్ అదర్ రిక్వైర్మెంట్ of Indian polity. Conceptual clarity, okay? Then properly defining your terms for getting good scores. We are speaking about how we should get good scores, okay? Okay, the syllabus of Indian polity we look at later. As I told you, see, ఏమేమి వస్తాయి ఇందులో, ఇది లాస్ట్లో చూద్దాము. లాస్ట్లో చూసినప్పుడు సిలబస్లోని థ్రస్ట్ ఏరియాస్ ఏమున్నాయి ఇక్కడ ఐడెంటిఫై చేద్దాం. Okay, but please remember, I told you UPSC is all about unpredictability, right? So thrust areas identify చేస్తాం, వాడు వేరే ఇవ్వచ్చు. Okay, but we'll try and identify those areas which we should compulsorily study as sincere students. ఏమేమి చదవాలి అది మర్యాదగా చదువుకుందాం. Okay, as sincere students అవి ఐడెంటిఫై చేద్దాం a little later. First we'll finish off with this. Now we'll try and take a look at one question that was given in the examination. Okay, in 2025. Okay, the question is this. We are looking at the question to see how best we should be able to understand and answer this. ఈ క్వశ్చన్ మనం చూసినప్పుడు దీన్ని కరెక్ట్గా ఎట్లా అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి, దీనికి కరెక్ట్గా ఎట్లా ఆన్సర్ రాయాలి. ఓకే, ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ సిలబస్ మీకు క్లియర్గా సిలబస్లో రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ అని ఉంది. గమనించారా? చూసారా? సిలబస్ చూసే ఉంటారు కదా. క్వశ్చన్ చూసారా? స్ట్రైట్ ఫ్రమ్ ద సిలబస్. అందుకే నేను చెప్పాను మీకు, సిలబస్లో ఒక్క వర్డ్ కూడా వదలకండి. సిలబస్లో ఉన్న ప్రతి ఒక్క టాపిక్ జాగ్రత్తగా చదవండి, ఐడెంటిఫై చేయండి. ఓకే, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ బాడీస్ అంటే ఏమేం బాడీస్ వస్తాయి ఇందులో అని ఐడెంటిఫై చేసి ఆ బాడీస్ గురించి కొద్దిగా రైటప్ని రెడీగా పెట్టుకోండి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ అటార్నీ జనరల్ క్వశ్చన్ ఇచ్చాడు మొన్న. అటార్నీ జనరల్ ఆర్టికల్ ఏంటి? ఎనీ ఐడియా? What are the important privileges that Attorney General enjoys? దీనికి మీ దగ్గర ఒక బేసిక్ రైటప్ ఉండాలి. For all the topics in the syllabus, have a basic write-up. Okay, right. నేను ఇక్కడ యాక్చువల్గా మీకు టాపిక్ సబ్జెక్ట్ చెప్పట్లేదు. I'm just trying to tell you how to approach this paper. The purpose of this class is this. Okay, how to approach the paper and how to get good marks. 130 marks. I told you paper 2 gives you a scope to get that. It gives you a scope really. It's demanding, కాదంటలేదు, బట్ స్టిల్ ఇట్ గివ్స్ యూ a scope. కానీ ఇందులో హిస్టరీ, జాగ్రఫీ, ఎకానమీ, సైన్స్ అన్నీ లేవు కదా. పాలిటీ, గవర్నెన్స్, IR, ఇంటర్నేషనల్ రిలేషన్స్ కదా, రైట్? ఓకే, we look at this question. Discuss the corrupt practices for the purpose of Representation of People's Act 1951. Analyze whether the increase in assets of legislators and their associates disproportionate to their known sources of income would constitute undue influence and consequently a corrupt practice. Okay, straight away the question is very straight, very simple. Okay, so how do we go about this question? Right, first, as I told you, understand the directive of the question. What are the directives that we see here? Discuss అన్నాడు ఫస్ట్. ఓకే, అనలైజ్ అన్నాడు. సో ఈ క్వశ్చన్లో 2 డైరెక్టివ్స్ ఉన్నాయండి. ఒకటి ఏంటంటే డిస్కస్ ద కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ ఫర్ ద పర్పస్ ఆఫ్ రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1951. అసలు కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ అంటే ఏంటి? రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1951లో కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ కింద వేటిని చెప్తారు, అది ఫస్ట్ మనం డిస్కస్ చేయాలి బ్రీఫ్గా. ఓకే, ఆ తర్వాత అనలైజ్ వెదర్ ద ఇంక్రీజ్ ఇన్ ద అసెట్స్ ఆఫ్ లెజిస్లేటర్స్ ఆర్ దేర్ అసోసియేట్స్ డిస్ప్రపోర్షనేట్ టు దేర్ నోన్ సోర్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్కమ్ వుడ్ కాన్స్టిట్యూట్ అన్డ్యూ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ అండ్ కాన్సిక్వెంట్లీ ఏ కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీస్. సో 2 parts ఉన్నాయండి. రిమెంబర్, whenever there are 2 parts to a question, the candidate is required to address both the parts of the question. Each part of the question will have its own allotment of marks. ఇది 15 మార్క్స్ అనుకోండి, 10 మార్క్స్ అనుకోండి, ఫస్ట్ పార్ట్కి 4, సెకండ్ పార్ట్కి 6 అట్లా అలాట్ చేసేస్తారు. ఓకే, కాబట్టి వెన్ ఎవర్ యూర్ రైటింగ్ యువర్ ఆన్సర్స్ ఎన్ష్యూర్ దాట్ యు ఆర్ అడ్రస్సింగ్ బోత్ ద పార్ట్స్ ఆఫ్ ద క్వశ్చన్. సపరేట్గా ఉంటే సపరేట్గా. ఓకే, సో ఫస్ట్ సో లెట్స్ డిస్కస్ ద కాన్సెప్ట్ ఆఫ్ కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ అండర్ ద రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1951. కరప్ట్ ఎలక్టరల్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ అంటే ఏంటి అండర్ దిస్ యాక్ట్? ఎనీ ఐడియా? హ్యావ్ యూ రెడ్ దిస్? రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1951. దేర్ ఆర్ 2 యాక్ట్స్ కదా, RPA, రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1950 అండ్ రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1951. రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్ 1951 is primarily related to the conduct of elections, recognition of political parties, registration of political parties. ఇవన్నీ కూడా they are in representation of people's act 1951. okay, ఈ representation of people's act 1951 there is a section called 123 in which this act identifies some practices as corrupt electoral practices. అవి ఏంటి అది డిస్కస్ చేయమని చెప్పాడు ఫస్ట్. సో చేసేద్దాం. ఏమేమి ఉన్నాయి చెప్పండి నాకు. ఎలాంటి ప్రాక్టీసెస్ని కరప్ట్ ఎలక్టరల్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ అని చెప్పి అంటారు. పోనీ మీరు చదవలేదనుకుందాం, నార్మల్గా ఎట్లాంటి పనులు ఎలక్షన్స్లో పోటీ చేసేవాళ్ళు చేయకూడదు, ఎట్లాంటి పనులు చేస్తే అవి కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ అవుతాయి, అది ట్రై చేయండి. పోనీ మీరు ఇంకా యాక్ట్ చదవలేదా? RPA యాక్ట్ చదవలేదా? ప్రిలిమినరీకి చదువుకుంటారు కదా, ప్రిలిమినరీకి ఇంపార్టెంటే కదా ఇది. చూడండి, ప్రిలిమినరీ వేరు, మెయిన్స్ వేరు కాదు. వాట్ ఎవర్ యూ స్టడీడ్ ఫర్ యువర్ ప్రిలిమినరీ యూఆర్ ఓన్లీ గోయింగ్ టు బిల్డ్ ఆన్ దాట్ ఫర్ యువర్ మెయిన్స్. ప్లీజ్ రిమెంబర్ దాట్. సో ప్రిలిమినరీ అంతా మర్చిపోకండి, అది కూడా పెట్టుకోండి మైండ్లో. డోంట్ వరీ, ప్రిలిమినరీ అయిపోయింది కదా, మన నెక్స్ట్ స్టెప్ కదా, ఇప్పుడు ప్రిలిమినరీతో పని లేదు అనుకోకండి, అది ఫౌండేషన్. యూ బిల్డ్ ఆన్ దాట్ ఫర్ యువర్ మెయిన్స్. ఓకే, సో యూ టెల్ మీ నౌ, అసలు ఎలక్షన్స్లో కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసెస్ అంటే ఏమేమి ఉండొచ్చు? మనీ ఇవ్వడం, దాన్ని ఏమంటారు? బ్రైబరీ అంటారు. ఇట్స్ కాల్డ్ ఎస్ బ్రైబరీ. ఇంకా బ్రైబరీ అంటే ఆఫరింగ్ ఇండ్యూస్మెంట్స్ టు ఓటర్స్. ఓకే, చీరా జాకెట్లు, సారా ప్యాకెట్లు, 500 నోట్లు, ఇట్లా ఏమేమి ఇస్తుంటారు కదండి. ఓకే, ఐ హవ్ సీన్ వన్ రీల్ రీసెంట్లీ ఇన్ తెలంగాణ ఎలక్షన్స్. ఒక చేత్తో ఒక వాటర్ బాటిల్ లిక్కర్, ఇంకో చేత్తో ఒక లైవ్ హెన్. నార్మల్గా ఒక బిర్యానీ ప్యాకెట్ ఇవ్వచ్చు కదా, లైవ్ హెన్. యూనో వై? దాన్ని హెన్ని పోసుకుని వండుకుంటున్నప్పుడు ఇది గుర్తొస్తాడనమాట. ఇట్స్ ఎ సైకలాజికల్ గేమ్, యూనో, ఇండ్యూస్మెంట్. దిస్ ఇస్ వాట్స్ కాల్డ్ ఎస్ బ్రైబరీ, యూనో. ఆఫరింగ్ ఇండ్యూస్మెంట్స్ to influence voting is called as bribery. Okay, that's a corrupt practice. ఇంకా ఏమున్నాయి? undue influence is another corrupt practice. undue influence అంటే ఏంటి? డైరెక్ట్లీ ఆర్ ఇండైరెక్ట్లీ ఇంటర్ఫియరింగ్ ఇన్ ద ఎక్సర్సైజ్ ఆఫ్ ఫ్రీ విల్ బై ఎ ఓటర్. వాడిని భయపెట్టడం కానీ, థ్రెటన్ చేయడం కానీ, వాడికి లంచం ఇవ్వడం కానీ, లేదా వాడికి ఏమో ఫాల్స్ ప్రామిసెస్ చేయడం కానీ చేసి వాడి ఫ్రీ ఎలక్టరల్ చాయిస్ని, డెసిషన్ మేకింగ్ని ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ చేయడం. దట్స్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ అన్డ్యూ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్. ఓకే, అట్లాగే యూనో యూజింగ్ ప్లేసెస్ ఆఫ్ వర్షిప్, అపీలింగ్ ఆన్ ద గ్రౌండ్స్ ఆఫ్ రిలీజియన్ ఆర్ కాస్ట్. ఓకే, అట్లాగే యూనో ప్రమోషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎనిమిటీ బిట్వీన్ గ్రూప్స్, పుల్లలు పెట్టడం, వాళ్ళు వేరు మనం వేరు, మనందరం కలిసి ఉండాలి, మీరు నాకు ఓట్లేయండి, మనం వాళ్ళు పని చూద్దాం, అంత చూద్దాం, ఇవన్నీ కూడా ప్రమోటింగ్ ఎనిమిటీ బిట్వీన్ గ్రూప్స్. దెన్ పబ్లికేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఫాల్స్ స్టేట్మెంట్స్ ఆర్ excessive electoral expenditure, using too much of money in elections. Or అదే గవర్నమెంట్ ఉందనుకోండి, పార్టీ ఇన్ పవర్, ఇఫ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ మిస్యూజింగ్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఫెసిలిటీస్, గవర్నమెంట్ వెహికల్స్ కానీ, గవర్నమెంట్ పబ్లిక్ బిల్డింగ్స్ కానీ, లేదా పబ్లిక్ గ్రౌండ్స్ ఫర్ కండక్టింగ్ మీటింగ్స్ కానీ, ఇలా పబ్లిక్ అఫీషియల్స్ ఉంటారు కదా, గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫీసర్స్, వాళ్ళ చేత ఎలక్షన్ పనులు చేర్చుకోవడం కానీ, ఇవన్నీ మిస్యూజ్ ఆఫ్ అఫీషియల్ మెషినరీ, గవర్నమెంట్ మెషినరీ, ఇవన్నీ కూడా దే ఆర్ ఆల్ ఎ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ electoral malpractices. They all constitute corrupt practices under Representation of People's Act. Now you got this? Okay? Now you try and answer the question for me. Discuss corrupt practices for the purpose of Representation of People's Act 1951. First part of the question answer చేస్తాం. బ్రైబరీ అన్నాము, అదన్నాము, ఇదన్నాము, ఈ చట్టంలో ఏమేమి ఉన్నాయో అవన్నీ చెప్పేసాం. ఓకే, నెక్స్ట్ అనలైజ్ whether the increase in the assets of the legislators అంటే ఆల్రెడీ ఎమ్మెల్యేలు, ఎంపీలు, ఓకే, and their associates disproportionate to their known sources of income would constitute undue influence and consequently a corrupt practice. ఆలోచించండి. Tell me, what do you think? This is the second part of the question, probably the core of the question is. Okay, you are going to take the examination very soon. These are the questions which are appearing in the examination. We are trying to discuss the question to understand the demands of how your preparation should be and how you can get maximum marks out of this paper. Okay, so think about this question now. Think properly for 1 minute and try and tell me how you are going to write your answer. There was a judgment given by Supreme Court in 2018, Lok Prahari versus Union of India case. In this case, Supreme Court said that every legislator should disclose his income. Every legislator and his associates and family members and relatives should disclose their incomes transparently. Okay, now ఇది సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ జడ్జిమెంట్ 2018లో. పొజిషన్ ఆఫ్ డిస్ప్రపోర్షనేట్ ఇన్కమ్. ఒకసారి క్వశ్చన్ జాగ్రత్తగా చూడండి, చూసి మీకు ఏమి రాయాలనిపిస్తుందో, ఎలా రాయాలనిపిస్తుందో మీరు నాకు చెప్పడానికి ట్రై చేయండి. విల్ సీ. నౌ దట్ యు అండర్స్టూడ్ ద ఫస్ట్ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద క్వశ్చన్ కదా. ఓకే, నౌ అనలైజ్ అంటున్నాడు కదా. డైరెక్టివ్ ఈజ్ ఫర్ యూ టు అనలైజ్ వెదర్ ద ఇంక్రీజ్ ఇన్ ద అసెట్స్ ఆఫ్ ద లెజిస్లేటర్స్ అండ్ దేర్ అసోసియేట్స్ disproportionate to their known sources of income would constitute undue influence and consequently a corrupt practice. Yeah? Supreme Court judgment lo em cheppindi Supreme Court? They should disclose their and incomes అని చెప్పింది. లోక్ ప్రహారీ వర్సెస్ యూనియన్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా కేస్. ఓకే, కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీస్ అండర్ రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్. ఓకే, is it a corrupt practice under the Representation of People's Act? Adi adigin question.
We cannot say physical because it's not very explicitly mentioned in the act.
Okay, right. She is perfectly right. See, ikkada manaki information okati unte saripotledu, ability to analyze kuda kavali. Ikkada em ani cheptunnadu vaadu question lo, possessing disproportionate property, does that constitute undue influence and consequently a corrupt practice? Undue influence undi, Representation of People's Act lo undue influence undi. Undue influence ante enti? Directly or indirectly trying to influence, directly or indirectly trying to influence free will of a voter, either by threat or by offering him money or by గివింగ్ హిమ్ సమ్ ఇన్సెంటివ్ ఆర్ మేకింగ్ ఎ ఫాల్స్ ప్రామిస్, ఇవన్నీ అండ్యూ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ కింద వస్తాయండి. ఇతని దగ్గర అసెట్స్ ఉన్నంత మాత్రాన అండ్యూ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ కాదు కదా, ఆయన డబ్బులు యూజ్ చేసుకుని ఆ ఓటర్ చాయిస్ని ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ చేస్తే అప్పుడు అది అండ్యూ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ అవుతుంది. ఇక్కడ ఏమన్నాడు, ఇంక్రీజ్ ఇన్ ద అసెట్స్, అది మాత్రమే చేశారు, అంతేకాని వాళ్ళ డబ్బులు ఉపయోగించలేదని చెప్పలేదు కదా మనకి ఎక్కడ. కాబట్టి మియర్ ఇంక్రీజ్ ఇన్ అసెట్స్ ఈజ్ నాట్ ఎ కరప్ట్ ప్రాక్టీస్ అండర్ రిప్రజెంటేషన్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్స్ యాక్ట్. దేర్ మైట్ బి అదర్ యాక్ట్స్, వేరే చట్టాలు ఉన్నాయండి. దేర్ ఆర్ అదర్ యాక్ట్స్ విచ్ మే బి అట్రాక్టెడ్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ దిస్. ఓకే, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ వీ హ్యావ్ ప్రివెన్షన్ ఆఫ్ కరప్షన్ యాక్ట్. Okay, so Prevention of Corruption Act may be an act which is attracted by disproportionate possession of wealth beyond their known income. Okay, ఇక్కడ కరప్షన్ చేస్తేనే కదా ఈ డిస్ప్రపోర్షనేట్ అసెట్స్ వచ్చినాయి. కాబట్టి there might be another act which may be violated but not a corrupt practice under the Representation of People's Act 1951. చూసారా, ఇక్కడ క్వశ్చన్లో మనకి జస్ట్ ఆ యాక్ట్లో ఉన్న ప్రొవిజన్స్ తెలిస్తే సరిపోవట్లేదండి. యూ రిక్వైర్ టు అప్లై దాట్ టు ద సినారియో అండ్ దెన్ మేక్ ఎ కంక్లూజన్. గాట్ ఇట్ రైట్? సో ఇఫ్ యూ క్యాన్ ప్రాపర్లీ అండర్స్టాండ్ ఇట్లాంటి క్వశ్చన్కి కూడా నేను చెప్పాను చూసారు మీకు 1 minute ఆఫ్ రిఫ్లెక్షన్. రిమెంబర్, ఎగ్జామినేషన్ సినారియోలో యూ విల్ బీ ఇన్ ఎ heightened state of excitement. Mind also, it will be a heightened state of excitement. In that examination scenario, your mind will work well. I know this because I've taken the examination. I've known this because I told you that I've been to the interview in 2004 and 2007. Okay? So in actual examination scenario, if you are relaxed, if you are confident, if your mindset is positive, your mind will be at a heightened state of excitement. You will think at double the speed, you will process at double the speed which you do normally. ఎగ్జామినేషన్ సినారియోలో టెన్షన్ పడ్డామనుకోండి, సరిగ్గా దానికి రివర్స్ అవుతుంది అనమాట. పాజిటివ్ మైండ్ సెట్ తోటి కాన్ఫిడెంట్గా రైట్ మైండ్ సెట్ తోటి ఎగ్జామినేషన్ హాల్లోకి ఎంటర్ అయ్యారనుకోండి, యువర్ మైండ్ విల్ వర్క్ డబుల్ టు ఇట్స్ కెపబిలిటీ. ఓకే, అప్పుడు వచ్చేస్తుంది మీ కళ్ళకి వచ్చేస్తుంది ఆన్సర్. యూ బి ఏబుల్ టు రైట్ దట్ ఆన్సర్ ప్రాపర్లీ. ఓకే, ఇప్పుడంటే మీరు కొంచెం రిలాక్స్డ్గా క్యాజువల్గా ఉన్నారు కదా, ఎగ్జామినేషన్ ఇట్లా ఉంటారు కదా, ఇక్కడ మర్యాదగా ఒళ్ళ దగ్గర పెట్టుకుని ఉంటారు కదా, కాబట్టి అక్కడ మీకు వచ్చేస్తుంది ఆన్సర్ ఆటోమేటిక్గా. ఓకే, సో డోంట్ వరీ. Right? All this is mental preparation. I'm trying to get you to know the standard of the questions. Okay? Are you with me? So, madam's approach was right. She thought about it, she understood the question properly, and she realized that mere possession of disproportionate assets is not a corrupt practice under Representation of People's Act. It may attract other laws, but not under this. That's the conclusion in your answer. Right? So you got it, right? So this was a question that was given in 2025. Okay. Now let us look at another question, also given in 2025. Okay. See, this is an exercise so that you will understand how to write answers, proper answers. I'm not here to just to give you an overall view of the syllabus. Okay. Syllabus kuda chuddam finally if there is time. Okay, but this is more important. Okay, question that was given in 2025. Indian Constitution has conferred the amending power on ordinary legislative institutions with few procedural hurdles. Okay, in view of this statement, examine procedural and substantive limitations on the amending power of the Parliament to change the Constitution. 250 words. Okay, 15 marks. Right? Proper structure is important. Understanding the question is important. Understanding the direction of the question also is important. Okay, so tell me, how would you start? This is considered to be 250 words answer ante a medium sized essay. That's how it is, isn't it? Okay, it's 150 words ante short answer. Idi medium sized essay. 11 minutes you have. Okay, to write an answer for this question. So how do you go about this? The Indian Constitution has conferred the amending power on ordinary legislative institutions with few procedural hurdles. In view of the statement, examine the procedural and substantive limitations on the amending power of the Parliament to change the constitution. So, any idea? Would you like to attempt an answer for this question? Think about the question first. Indian constitution has conferred the amending power on ordinary legislative institutions. What are the ordinary legislative institutions we have in this country? Ordinary lawmaking bodies. Parliament and state legislatures. These are the ordinary lawmaking bodies, isn't it? Right? So, amendment of constitution also is conferred on ordinary legislative institutions with few procedural hurdles. Okay? So, lawmaking, constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendment has a certain procedural hurdles which are not the same for ordinary lawmaking. That is the first thing that you will have to understand. Okay? Second, in view of this statement, examine the procedural and substantive limitations on the amending power of the parliament. Specifically, he is asking about parliament now. And in Paina, he asked about both. Right? Kinda, he is only asking about parliament. Right? So now, how do you go about this question? You write about the basics of constitutional amendment. Right? So, which is that article which speaks about constitutional amendment procedure? Article 368. So, you mentioned that article. I told you, kada, those basics should be there in your answer. Remember, one more thing, please. Indian polity is not about articles, but there are some articles which you will have to compulsorily remember. అందుకనే నేను మీకు చెప్పాను కదండి, ఒక రిపోజిటరీ తయారు చేసుకోండి ఆఫ్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ ఆర్టికల్స్, ఇంపార్టెంట్ జడ్జ్మెంట్స్ అండ్ కేస్ లాస్, ఇంపార్టెంట్ కమిటీస్ అండ్ రికమెండేషన్స్. సెంటర్ స్టేట్ రిలేషన్స్కి వీ హ్యావ్ దిస్ సర్కారియా కమిటీ, జస్టిస్ మదన్ మోహన్ పూంచి కమిటీ రికమెండేషన్స్. అవి గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాలి కొన్ని, నాట్ ఆల్, సమ్ ఆఫ్ దెమ్ యూ హ్యావ్ టు రిమెంబర్. Okay, tell me, which is the judgment given by Supreme Court which is considered to have set a benchmark to the secular quality of Indian Constitution? The judgment given by Supreme Court. The judgment given by Supreme Court which is always referred to whenever you are attempting to write an answer on secularism. Any idea? The judgment of Supreme Court in which Supreme Court declared that secularism is a part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. The judgment in which Supreme Court declared that secularism was a quality of Indian Constitution right from the day of the commencement of Indian Constitution. It was an implicit nature of Indian Constitution. 42nd Amendment Act only made it explicit what was already implicit. అని ఒక జడ్జ్మెంట్లో చెప్పింది సుప్రీం కోర్టు. ఏ కేసు అది? 1994 ఆ జడ్జ్మెంట్ వచ్చింది. డాష్ వర్సెస్ స్టేట్ ఆఫ్ కర్ణాటక. In that very same judgment, Supreme Court also ruled that federalism is a part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. ఇదే జడ్జిమెంట్లో ఇన్ని కేసెస్ చెప్పారు మీకు, ఎప్పటికీ స్ట్రైక్ కావట్లేదా? నేను చెప్తా ఇదేనా అంటారు అప్పుడు, నాకు తెలుసు. S.R. Bommai case. Okay, it was in this case the Supreme Court ruled that secularism is a part of the basic structure. It's implicit in the Indian Constitution right from the day of its commencement. Ante it was this judgment which set the benchmark for the quality of India's secularism. You know, it is this that you'll have to. ఇట్లాంటివి మీరు చెప్పాను కదండి, సెక్యులరిజం మీద ఇన్నిసార్లు క్వశ్చన్స్ అడిగారు మెయిన్స్లో. దాని మీద మీరు రాసుకుంటున్నటువంటి లిటరేచర్లో ఈ కేసు ఓకే కంపల్సరీగా మీరు మెన్షన్ చేయాలి. అట్లా దెర్ ఆర్ సమ్ ఫండాస్ విచ్ విల్ సీమ్ వెరీ అప్రోప్రియేట్ ఇన్ యువర్ ఆన్సర్స్. ఓకే, అవి మీ ఆన్సర్స్లో కనిపించాలి. రైట్. సో వాట్ ఆర్ ద ప్రొసీజరల్ లిమిటేషన్స్? ఫస్ట్, ఆర్డినరీ లాస్కి సింపుల్ మెజారిటీ కావాలి. కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్కి స్పెషల్ మెజారిటీ కావాలి. అది ఒక ప్రొసీజరల్ హర్డిల్. ఓకే, ఒకటి. సెకండ్, ఆర్డినరీ లాస్. ఇన్ కేస్ దెర్ ఇస్ అ డెడ్ లాక్ బిట్వీన్ బోత్ ద హౌసెస్, ఎ జాయింట్ సెషన్ ఈజ్ కండక్టెడ్. బట్ ఫర్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్ there is no provision for a joint session. Both the houses should pass the constitutional amendment bill separately. That's another procedural hurdle, which is not like ordinary lawmaking, right? ఇంకేమన్నాయా కొన్ని ప్రొవిజన్స్ అమెండ్ చేయాలి అంటే కనీసం 50% ఆఫ్ ద స్టేట్ లెజిస్లేచర్ షుడ్ గివ్ దేర్ యాక్సెప్టెన్స్. దట్స్ అనదర్ ప్రొసీజరల్ హర్డల్. ఓకే, సో కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్ ఈస్ ఎ పవర్ కన్ఫర్డ్ ఆన్ ఆర్డినరీ legislative bodies, but with these procedural hurdles. Correct. Some of the constitutional amendment bills require prior consent of the President of India. For example, bills which are seeking to alter the names, territories or boundaries of states. ఇది కూడా ఒక ప్రొసీజరల్ హర్డిల్. ఓకే, అట్లా రైట్. ఇవి అయిపోయిన తర్వాత వాట్ ఆర్ ద సబ్స్టాంటివ్ అండ్ ప్రొసీజరల్ లిమిటేషన్స్ ఆన్ the parliament's power to make laws. Even the limitations unnaya? Can parliament amend all parts of Indian constitution? Is there any limitation? Basic structure, basic structure is a limitation. Inka limitations. Can the courts exercise judicial review over constitutional amendment acts? Can the courts exercise, ఇది రాజ్యాంగానికి విరుద్ధం ఈ అమెండ్మెంట్ మేము కొట్టేస్తున్నాం అని, క్యాన్ ద కోర్ట్స్ ఎక్సర్సైజ్ జ్యుడిషియల్ రివ్యూ ఫర్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్ యాక్ట్స్ ఆర్ నాట్? వాట్ డూ యూ థింక్? ఎనీ ఐడియా? ఎస్ సార్? నో? ఐ మీన్ రిమెంబర్, ఒక చిన్న స్టోరీ చెప్పేస్తా, ఒక 2 minutes. ఓకే, అవుట్ ఆఫ్ ద వే కాదు, టాపిక్కి సంబంధించింది, కానీ నేను సబ్జెక్ట్ చెప్పకూడదు అనుకున్నా కానీ ఒక్క టాపిక్ చెప్పేస్తాను. ఓకే, నౌ ప్లీజ్ రిమెంబర్ దట్ జ్యుడిషియల్ రివ్యూ ఇస్ ఎక్సర్సైజ్డ్ ఫర్ లాస్. Judicial review is exercised for laws. So laws made by Parliament. What is the definition of law? మన బిట్ ఇచ్చారు ప్రిలిమినరీలో, బిట్ ఇచ్చారు కదా, ఆర్టికల్ 13 కింద డెఫినేషన్ ఆఫ్ లా అంటే ఏంటి, ఏమేమి వస్తాయి, డెఫినేషన్ ఆఫ్ లాలో ఏమేమి వస్తాయి? ఎస్, ఎనాక్ట్మెంట్స్ మేడ్ బై లెజిస్లేచర్స్. పార్లమెంట్ కానీ స్టేట్ లెజిస్లేచర్ కానీ చేసిన చట్టాలు, ఎనాక్ట్మెంట్స్ మేడ్ బై లెజిస్లేచర్స్. 2, సబార్డినేట్ లాస్. Please remember that for every action of the government, there should be a written order or notice or a bylaw or a rule or a regulation. There should be some form of written order. GO అంటారు చూసారా, GO కానీ, నోటీస్ కానీ, బైలా కానీ, రెగ్యులేషన్ కానీ, రూల్ కానీ, ఏదో ఒకటి ఉండాలండి. They are all called collectively as subordinate laws. Okay, right. Even they are also a part of definition of law. And customs and conventions. Even they are also a part of the definition of law. All of them are part of definition of law. Please remember that constitutional amendments are not a part of the definition of law under Article 13. Okay? And judicial review applies to these laws. మరి కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్స్కి జ్యుడిషియల్ రివ్యూ అప్లై అవుతుందా అవదా? ఒక కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్ని సుప్రీంకోర్టు కొట్టేయగలదా? క్యాన్ ద సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ నలిఫై అండ్ డిక్లేర్ ఎ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ అమెండ్మెంట్ అల్ట్రా వైరస్? ఇట్ హ్యాపెండ్ కదా, అంటే చెయ్యొచ్చు కదా, అంటే జ్యుడిషియల్ రివ్యూ అప్లై అవుతుంది కదా. ఈవెన్ దాట్ ఆల్సో ఈజ్ a procedural substantive limitation on Parliament's power of constitutional amendment. Followed me? Okay, it is these that you will have to mention. Okay, so constitutional amendment, different types of constitutional amendment, how ordinary lawmaking is different from constitution, what are the procedural hurdles, ivi meer mention cheyali. It's very easy. Okay, but you should know the drift of the question, the direction of the question. That's the key, that's important. Okay, ఇది చూడండి, ఇది ఆల్సో గివెన్ ఇన్ 2024-25 కాదు. constitutional morality is the fulcrum which acts as an essential check upon the high functionaries and citizens alike. చాలా హై సౌండింగ్ ఉంది క్వశ్చన్, కానీ చాలా సింపుల్. పెద్ద పెద్ద పదాలు కనిపిస్తున్నాయి క్వశ్చన్లో మనకి. అది చూడగానే ఏంద్రనా ఇదంతా అనిపిస్తుంది కదా, ఫల్క్రమ్ అంటున్నాడు, ఏదేదో అంటున్నాడు కదా ఇక్కడ, రైట్? ఇట్ సౌండ్స్ వెరీ హై సౌండింగ్, బట్ వన్స్ యూ స్టార్ట్ డిసెక్టింగ్ ద క్వశ్చన్, ఇట్ ఈస్ వెరీ ఈజీ. Okay? Constitutional morality is the fulcrum which acts as the essential check upon the high functionaries and citizens alike. In view of the above observation of the Supreme Court, explain the concept of constitutional morality and its application to ensure balance between judicial independence and judicial accountability in India. Constitutional morality ante enti? Okati, okay, it is the fulcrum, of course, which acts as a check upon high functionaries and citizens alike. How the concept of constitutional morality and its application ensures balance between judicial independence and judicial accountability. Judicial independence undali, undi kada, but is there judicial accountability in this country? మొన్న సుప్రీంకోర్టు చీఫ్ జస్టిస్ మొత్తం భారతదేశంలోని యూత్ని కాక్రోచెస్ అన్నాడంట, పారాసైట్స్ అన్నాడంట. హూ ఈజ్ హోల్డింగ్ హిమ్ అకౌంటబుల్ ఫర్ సచ్ డిస్పరాజింగ్ అండ్ ఇన్సల్టింగ్ రిమార్క్స్ అగైన్స్ ద యూత్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ కంట్రీ? షుడెంట్ హీ బీ హెల్డ్ రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ ఆర్ నాట్? పిచ్చి పిచ్చిగా బొద్దింకలు అనొచ్చా అండి యూత్ని? చెప్పండి నాకు, అది ఎంత ఇన్సల్టింగ్ టర్మ్. Actually, the youth of this country is India's pride. This is demographic dividend, which is the path for us to realize superpower status in the future. కదా, ఇట్లాంటి యూత్ని పట్టుకుని కాక్రోచ్లు, పారాసైట్లు అనొచ్చా? Who is holding him accountable? You know, there was a judgment given by a high court in which the magistrate, she was a lady, and the case was the POCSO case. ఓకే, అదే చైల్డ్ సెక్షువల్ అఫెన్సెస్ ప్రివెన్షన్ యాక్ట్ ఉంది కదా, పోక్సో యాక్ట్. దానికి సంబంధించిన కేసు ఇన్ విచ్ ద ఫీమేల్ మెజిస్ట్రేట్ హ్యాడ్ గివెన్ ఎ జడ్జ్మెంట్ సేయింగ్ దట్ బికాస్ దేర్ వాజ్ నో స్కిన్ టు స్కిన్ కాంటాక్ట్, సెక్షువల్ అఫెన్స్ కెన్ నాట్ బి ఎస్టాబ్లిష్డ్. అంటే బట్టల మీద ఆ వ్యక్తిని టచ్ చేశాడు కానీ స్కిన్ టు స్కిన్ కాంటాక్ట్ లేదు కదా, కాబట్టి దెర్ ఈజ్ నో సెక్షువల్ అఫెన్స్ అని చెప్పి తీర్పిచ్చింది అన్నమాట ఒక హైకోర్టు జడ్జ్. దిస్ జడ్జ్మెంట్ వాజ్ లేటర్ సెట్ అసైడ్ బై సుప్రీం కోర్ట్, అండ్ సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ రూల్ దట్ ఈవెన్ దో దెర్ ఈజ్ నో స్కిన్ టు స్కిన్ కాంటాక్ట్, సెక్షువల్ అఫెన్స్ వాజ్ కమిటెడ్ అని చెప్పి సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ తీర్పిచ్చింది. అంటే ఇలాంటి ఒక పిచ్చి జడ్జ్మెంట్ ఇచ్చినందుకు హైకోర్టు జడ్జిని షీ షుడ్ బి హెల్డ్ అకౌంటబుల్ ఆర్ నాట్? Is there judicial accountability? మీరు నేను ఉన్నాం, private individuals. Can we file a complaint against a high court judge and get him sacked for having subjected us to injustice? Can we complain against a high court? What is the procedure for removal of a high court judge? What is the procedure for removal of a high court judge? A high court judge can be removed after a motion of removal is preferred by both the houses of parliament with special majority. స్పెషల్ మెజారిటీతో పార్లమెంట్లో 2 సభల్లో ఒక మోషన్ ఆఫ్ రిమూవల్ పాస్ చేస్తే కానీ ఒక హైకోర్టు జడ్జిని మనం రిమూవ్ చేయలేము. ఇట్ జస్ట్ షోస్ దట్ వీ, ఈవెన్ దో వీఆర్ సబ్జెక్టెడ్ టు ఇంజస్టిస్, కెనాట్ ప్రొసీడ్ అగెయిన్స్ట్ ఎ జడ్జ్. ఇప్పటిదాకా ఇండియాలో ఒక్క జడ్జినైనా తీసేసారా? తీయలేకపోయారు కదా. దెర్ ఈజ్ నో అకౌంటబిలిటీ. ద ప్రాబ్లమ్ విత్ ఇండియా ఈజ్ దట్ జుడిషియరీ ఈజ్ ఇండిపెండెంట్, but judiciary is unaccountable for its actions. It is this constitutional morality which ensures a balance between judicial independence and accountability. Okay, now you have to explain the concept of constitutional morality here. It was proposed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. You know that the concept of constitutional morality was for the first time proposed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It simply means that we should understand the constitution in the form of its essence, not merely based on the constitutional text. ఆ టెక్స్ట్ కాదు చదవాల్సింది, ఆ టెక్స్ట్ వెనకాల ఉన్న ఎసెన్స్ని అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి. దట్ ఈజ్ ద మీనింగ్ ఆఫ్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ మొరాలిటీ. ఓకే, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్, యూ నో వాట్స్ ఎ రిపబ్లికన్ ఫార్మ్ ఆఫ్ గవర్నమెంట్, ఇజంట్ ఇట్? వాట్స్ ఎ రిపబ్లిక్? Republic. The highest head is elected. Kada? But you know what is its essence? The essence of republicanism. It means that any person who occupies the office of the head of the state should be elected by people, should not have hereditary rights. There cannot be kings and monarchs in this country. The highest head should be elected by people. అయితే more important ఏంటో తెలుసా, the rule that the highest head should be elected applies to every political office in this country, starting from the president till the panchayat president. Every political office in this country should be elected by people. No individual or no section of society will have any special privileges for this political offices. మంత్రి కొడుకు మంత్రి, ముఖ్యమంత్రి కొడుకు ముఖ్యమంత్రి, ఎమ్మెల్యే కొడుకు ఎమ్మెల్యే, అవి చెల్లవు. ఓకే, వారసత్వ రాజకీయాలు చెల్లవు. ఓకే, the rule that applies to the President of India applies to every political office in this country. That is the essence of republicanism. That should guide our public functionaries. That's the meaning of constitutional morality. You got me? Right? It is this that you'll have to explain in your answer. Actually, when you start looking at the things, right, questions more seriously, you'll get a way, you'll get the path. Okay, provided ఈ మధ్యకాలంలో కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ మొరాలిటీ గురించి చాలా డిస్కషన్ అయింది కదా, చాలా డిస్కషన్ అయింది. ఇట్స్ వెరీ మచ్ ఇన్ న్యూస్ కదా. సో కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ మొరాలిటీ అంటే ఏంటి, ఒక్క 2 minutes స్పెండ్ చేసి దానికి సంబంధించిన బేసిక్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ దగ్గర పెట్టుకోండి చాలు. ఓకే, ఇచ్చిన క్వశ్చన్ ఆ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ మొరాలిటీ అనే కాన్సెప్ట్ని అర్థం చేసుకుని అప్లై చేసి యూ కెన్ రైట్ యువర్ ఆన్సర్స్. గాట్ ఇట్? అది లేదనుకోండి, ఫస్ట్ ఇఫ్ యు ఆర్ గ్రోపింగ్ ఇన్ డార్క్నెస్ ట్రయింగ్ టు డిఫైన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ మొరాలిటీ, యువర్ ఆన్సర్ ఈస్ గాన్. ఓకే, కాబట్టి ఇంపార్టెంట్ కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఏమైతే ఉన్నాయో, కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఇన్ న్యూస్ ఏమైతే ఉన్నాయో, కాంటెంపరీ ఇష్యూస్ ఏమైతే ఉన్నాయో, వాటికి సంబంధించిన ప్రాథమిక సమాచారాన్ని గెట్ ఇట్ విత్ యూ అండ్ కీప్ దట్ రెడీ. Okay, that's the first thing that you should do now. Okay, remember, the impression that you're going to give the examiner is going to be formed in the first few lines of your answer. Okay, already impression వచ్చేస్తాడు examiner. Okay, so start it well, end it well. Okay, in the middle address the question, even if a few words short, it doesn't matter. నోబడీ ఈజ్ పర్ఫెక్ట్. పర్ఫెక్ట్గా ఆన్సర్స్ రాసేవాడికి 250 రావాలి. ఎంత వస్తుంది హైయెస్ట్ చెప్పండి? 250కి 110, 100 వస్తుంది కదా. గుడ్ స్కోర్, టెరిఫిక్ స్కోర్ అంటే 130 వస్తుంది. ఓకే, ఎ లిటిల్ మోర్ దెన్ 50% అంతే. ఓకే, సో వీఆర్ నాట్ గోయింగ్ టు బి పర్ఫెక్ట్, అగ్రీడ్. ఓకే, బట్ వీ ఆర్ గోయింగ్ టు డూ అవర్ బెస్ట్, గోయింగ్ టు గెట్ ద బెస్ట్ స్కోర్ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ దిస్. ఓకే, దిస్ ఇస్ అబౌట్ పాలిటీ. ఓకే, మరి ఇది the next thing that we'll discuss very briefly, though time అవుతుంది కదా, అయిపోయిందా 4?
In the previous question you said that judiciary has no accountability, right?
Yes.
So can you mention that in our answer?
Yes madam, that's the reason why that question was given. ఇండియాలో ఇప్పుడు జరుగుతున్న డిస్కషన్, డిబేట్ ఏంటంటే, ఇన్ దిస్ కంట్రీ జుడిషియరీ ఈజ్ అట్టర్లీ అన్అకౌంటబుల్ ఫర్ ఇట్స్ యాక్షన్స్. ఇలాంటి పిచ్చి పిచ్చి జడ్జిమెంట్స్ ఇచ్చినప్పుడు సంబడీ షుడ్ బి ఏబుల్ టు టేక్ జుడిషియరీ టు టాస్క్. ఎంతమంది జడ్జెస్ని రిమూవ్ చేశారు? Transparency International mentions that judiciary is the second most corrupt institution in this country. ఒక్కడైనా తీసారా ఇప్పుడు దాకా? వాళ్ళందరూ సత్యమూర్తులు, న్యాయమూర్తులు, అత్యంత పవిత్రమైన వాళ్ళు ఏం కాదు కదా. అందరూ అక్కడక్కడ అవినీతి ఉంది కదా. బట్ స్టిల్ వీఆర్ నాట్ ఏబుల్ టు హోల్డ్ ద జుడిషియరీ అకౌంటబుల్. దట్స్ ద డిబేట్ దట్స్ గోయింగ్ ఆన్ ఇన్ దిస్ కంట్రీ టుడే. One of the biggest problems is that judiciary in this country is continuing to remain outside the ambit of accountability. That's a big problem in this country. Yes, you're asking something.
Some people say that we should not overly criticize the government or overly criticize the judiciary.
Yeah, I mean, the question itself is like this. Constitutional morality should balance judicial independence with judicial accountability. Yes. You're not criticizing the judiciary. You're saying that, yes, judiciary in this country is unaccountable. That's the truth. You're not criticizing it. Got it? అది క్రిటిసిజం కాదండి, అది ట్రూత్. అది ఓకే. ఇన్ ఇండియా ఈజ్ డెమోక్రసీ పర్ఫెక్ట్ డెమోక్రసీ ఇండియాలో లేదు కదా. we have politicization of caste, we have criminalization of politics, we have politicians and bureaucrats nexus, we have electoral malpractices, we have corrupt practices, we see using of religious places and religious appeals and caste appeals by voters, we see influence of money in elections. Ivanni kuda, these are the reality of Indian democracy. Don't you think you should criticize them? Don't you think you should criticize them? You should. Okay? కానీ మరి ఇండియన్ డెమోక్రసీ ఈస్ గోయింగ్ టు డాగ్స్ అని రాయకూడదండి. అట్లా రాయకూడదు. అట్లా రాయకుండా యూ షుడ్, ఇఫ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ రిక్వైర్డ్ వేర్ ఎవర్ ఇట్ ఈస్, యూ షుడ్ క్రిటిసైజ్ దెమ్. ఓకే? డోంట్ బీ టూ ఓవర్ట్. ఓకే? ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ కదా, కంక్లూషన్లో వాట్ ఈస్ ఇంపార్టెంట్? బ్యాలెన్స్, కన్స్ట్రక్టివ్ suggestions, okay, and a way forward if possible. These become the striking aspects of your conclusion. Okay, right. So governance. So I hope I've given you the way to go about Indian polity, right? So prepare a repository. That's the key of important things. See that your answer doesn't miss out on the most on the essentials like articles and those things. That will be very glaring defect in your answer if you do that. Got it? Okay? Okka mistake ni avoid cheyandi chalu, right? And address the question properly. అది ఇంకా జనరల్ డైరెక్టివ్సే, ఇంకా అందరు చెప్పేవే కదా. మీకు అందరూ ఇప్పటిదాకా ఎన్నైనా అందరూ చెప్పే ఉంటారు కదా. క్వశ్చన్ అడ్రస్ చేయండి, డైరెక్టివ్స్ని ఫాలో అవ్వండి, స్ట్రక్చర్డ్ ఆన్సర్స్ ఇవ్వండి, ఆన్సర్స్ మధ్య కనెక్షన్స్ ఇవ్వండి, కన్స్ట్రక్టివ్ కంక్లూషన్స్ ఇవ్వండి. ఇంట్రడక్షన్లో యూ ఇంట్రడ్యూస్ ద టాపిక్ ఏ ప్రాపర్ వే. ఓకే? డిఫైన్ ద టర్మ్స్ ఇన్ ద ఇంట్రడక్షన్, ఇవన్నీ చెప్పే ఉంటారు కదా మీకు. ఓకే? సో యూ జస్ట్ ట్రైంగ్ టు లుక్ ఎట్ హౌ వీ గెట్ మోర్ మార్క్స్ ఇన్ ఇండియన్ పాలిటిక్స్. నెక్స్ట్ గవర్నెన్స్. యు నో దట్ గవర్నెన్స్ ఇస్ వన్ ఆఫ్ ద మోస్ట్ ఇగ్నోర్డ్ పార్ట్. 50 మార్క్స్. ఇండియన్ ఎకానమీ కూడా 50-60 మార్క్సే. కానీ అందరూ ఎకానమీని గంటలు రోజులు నెలలు చదువుతారు. కానీ గవర్నెన్స్ కూడా 50 మార్క్సే. బట్ పీపుల్ ఇగ్నోర్ ఇట్. పైన చదువుతారు. వాట్ యు మీన్ బై గవర్నెన్స్? టెల్ మీ. హౌ ఈజ్ ఇట్ డిఫరెంట్ ఫ్రమ్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్? See, the very term itself was neglected by you, you know. This is what I meant when I said people ignore this aspect of the syllabus. But this is a very, very lucrative part of the syllabus. This is a part of the syllabus in which preparation is very easy, in fact. Okay? Some basic concepts. Because there is no Indian polity and what is the source? ఇండియన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ అట్ వర్క్ ఉంది, ఎన్సీఆర్టీ, ఈ లక్ష్మీకాంత్ ఉంది, అది చదువుకుంటారు. అట్లా గవర్నెన్స్కి ఒక పర్టికులర్ సోర్స్ అంటూ ఏమి ఇప్పుడు దాకా ఎస్టాబ్లిష్ కాలేదండి. సో పీపుల్ లుక్ ఎట్ డైవర్స్ సోర్సెస్. ఓకే? అండ్ ద క్వశ్చన్స్ ఇన్ గవర్నెన్స్ టిల్ నౌ ఆర్ స్ట్రిక్ట్లీ ఫ్రమ్ ద సిలబస్. గట్టిగా ఒక 25 to 30 టాపిక్స్ ఉంటాయి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ప్రెషర్ గ్రూప్స్, ఓకే, ఈ గవర్నెన్స్, సిటిజన్స్ చార్టర్స్, అట్లాగే మనకి వాల్యూస్ అండ్ ఎథిక్స్ ఇన్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్, కొన్ని కాన్సెప్ట్స్ లైక్ అకౌంటబిలిటీ ఇన్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్. ఓకే? ఇట్లా కొన్ని కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఉంటాయి. ఒక 25 టాపిక్స్ ఉంటాయి గట్టిగా. అవి చదువుకున్నాం అనుకోండి, ఆల్మోస్ట్ ఎవ్రీ క్వశ్చన్ ఇన్ గవర్నెన్స్ విల్ బి ఏబుల్ టు ఆన్సర్. ఓకే? దిస్ ఈజ్ వన్ సెగ్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ ద సిలబస్ ఇన్ విచ్ యూ కెన్ యాక్చువల్లీ reach out and secure your marks, provided you do proper work. Okay? Second, స్టూడెంట్స్ గవర్నెన్స్ సంబంధించి చాలా అడ్హాక్ అప్రోచ్ని ఫాలో అవుతూ ఉంటారు. ఓకే? ఏఆర్సీ రిపోర్ట్ ఒకటి చదువుతారు, ఏదో ఒక చిన్న మెటీరియల్ తీసుకుని దాని నుంచి 4 పేజీలు చదివేసి అయిపోయింది అనిపిస్తారు గవర్నెన్స్. అట్లా కాదు. గవర్నెన్స్ ప్రతి ఒక్క టాపిక్ మీద యూ ప్రిపేర్ యువర్ నోట్స్. Okay, on accountability, on what are citizens charters, because you will see that in 2024-25 itself, in 2 papers I chusanu, concepts, e-governance, citizens charters, accountability, all the things that we've spoken about now, you know, then pressure groups, all these have appeared in these 2 years papers. Okay, kabatti it's very predictable. The syllabus in governance is very predictable. But the catch here, how to get very, very good score in governance, మీరు రాసే ప్రతి ఒక్క ఆన్సర్లో కూడా if you can incorporate current information or information related to current events, then you get very high scores in governance. Governance-లో high scores రావాలి అంటే this is the secret. For example, if you are writing about accountability, okay, you can write about some recent initiatives taken by the government to promote accountability. Okay, or if you are writing an answer about let's say citizens charters, you can write about the recent Gowtham model, okay, which actually gives a little more teeth to the citizens charters and delivery of public services. ఓకే, సో ఇట్లా రీసెంట్గా గవర్నమెంట్ టేకప్ చేసిన ఇనిషియేటివ్స్ ఏమైతే ఉంటే అవి మీ నాలెడ్జ్లో ఉంటే అవి మీ ఆన్సర్స్లో పెట్టండి. కరెంట్ వాల్యూ అడిషన్ టు యువర్ ఆన్సర్స్ ఇన్ గవర్నెన్స్ గివ్స్ యూ వెరీ వెరీ హై స్కోర్స్. ఓకే, నెక్స్ట్ పాలసీస్ ఉన్నాయి కదా. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ వీ హ్యావ్ నేషనల్ హెల్త్ పాలసీ, నేషనల్ పాలసీ టువర్డ్స్ ఏజ్డ్. ఓకే, ఈ పాలసీస్కి సంబంధించి ట్రై టు క్రియేట్ టెంప్లెట్స్, మోడల్స్. ఓకే, అట్లాగే కమిషన్స్ ఉన్నాయి, నేషనల్ కమిషన్ ఫర్ ఉమెన్, నేషనల్ కమిషన్ ఫర్ మైనారిటీస్, అన్నిటికీ ఒక టెంప్లెట్ క్రియేట్ చేసుకోండి. ఓకే, ఎప్పుడు ఫామ్ చేశారు, కాంపోజిషన్ ఏంటి, ఫంక్షన్స్ ఏంటి, డ్యూటీస్ ఏంటి, రీసెంట్ ఇష్యూస్ ఏంటి. ఓకే, అండ్ హౌ టు మేక్ ఇట్ మోర్ ఎఫెక్టివ్. అంతే, ఒక టెంప్లెట్ క్రియేట్ చేసుకోండి. ట్రై టు హ్యావ్ ద సేమ్ టెంప్లెట్ ఫర్ ఆల్ ద కమిషన్స్. ఓకే, సో దట్ ఇట్ విల్ బికమ్ ఈజీ ఫర్ యూ టు రిమెంబర్ and reproduce in the examination. The questions that he is asking on commissions pertain to only these: role the commission plays and whether the commission is able to play its role appropriately or not. ఇవే అడుగుతున్నారు క్వశ్చన్స్. కాబట్టి ఈ టెంప్లెట్లోనే మీరు కమిషన్ సంబంధించిన అన్ని టాపిక్స్ మీద మీరు తయారు చేసి పెట్టేసుకోండి. ఓకే, అట్లాగే పాలసీస్ గురించి కూడా ప్రిపేర్ టెంప్లెట్స్ అండ్ కీప్ దెమ్ రెడీ విత్ యూ. రైట్, డోంట్ గో టూ డీప్. లేటెస్ట్ పాలసీస్ ఒక 2-3 పాలసీస్. ఓకే, ఇఫ్ దే ఆర్ ఫ్లాగ్షిప్ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్, స్పెసిఫిక్గా వాటి గురించి కొంచెం ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఎక్కువ తీసి పెట్టుకోండి. ఓకే, అంతకంటే ఎక్కువ డోంట్ డూ టూ మచ్ ఆఫ్ డిగింగ్ అండ్ డోంట్ డూ టూ మచ్ ఆఫ్ రీసెర్చ్ ఆన్ దస్. ఓకే, దిస్ ఈస్ హౌ యూ గెట్ గుడ్ స్కోర్స్. సో కరెంట్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ should be used for value addition, and of course read Administrative Reforms Commission, the second Administrative Reforms Commission reports. ప్రతి ఒక్క దాని మీద వీళ్ళ రిపోర్ట్స్ ఉన్నాయండి. కరప్షన్ మీద ఉన్నాయి, ఎథిక్స్ ఇన్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్ మీద ఉన్నాయి, సిటిజన్స్ చార్టర్స్ మీద వీళ్ళ రిపోర్ట్ ఒకటి ఉంది. ఓకే, సో ఆల్ ద అడ్మినిస్ట్రేటివ్ రిఫార్మ్స్ కమిషన్స్ రిపోర్ట్స్ తీసుకుని ఆ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేటివ్ రిఫార్మ్స్ కమిషన్స్లో ఇప్పుడు సిటిజన్స్ చార్టర్స్ గురించి కానీ, ఎథిక్స్ ఇన్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్ గురించి కానీ, అకౌంటబిలిటీ గురించి వాళ్ళు ఇచ్చినటువంటి స్పెసిఫిక్ రికమెండేషన్స్ రాసి పెట్టుకోండి. పుట్ దెమ్ యాజ్ అ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ యువర్ రిపోజిటరీ. మీకు వాటికి సంబంధించిన ఏ క్వశ్చన్ వచ్చినా కానీ ఈ ఏఆర్సీ, సెకండ్ ఏఆర్సీ రిపోర్ట్లోని ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ యూ విల్ బి ఏబుల్ టు యూస్. ఓకే, సో దిస్ ఈజ్ హౌ యూ గెట్ గుడ్ స్కోర్స్ ఇన్ గవర్నెన్స్. ఓకే, రైట్, ఎనీ డౌట్స్? యాక్చువల్లీ ఐ వాంటెడ్ టు డిస్కస్ వన్ క్వశ్చన్ ఆల్సో, బట్ ఐ డోంట్ థింక్ వీ హ్యావ్ టైమ్. ఒక క్వశ్చన్ డిస్కస్ చేస్తే మనకి ఇంకొంచెం ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ వస్తుంది గవర్నెన్స్ మీద. బట్ ఓకే, some other day, right? ఇది ఎట్లా వస్తుంది ఇది? ఓకే, నెక్స్ట్ we have issues related to social justice. What do you mean by justice? Any idea? Justice, fairness. Okay, that's good enough. Fair enough. Right, justice is fairness. Okay, being fair to marginalized communities, that's social justice. సొసైటీలో మార్జినలైజ్డ్ కమ్యూనిటీస్ ఎవరైతే ఉన్నారో వాళ్ళ పట్ల బీయింగ్ ఫెయిర్ ఈజ్ ట్రయింగ్ టు రియలైజ్ సోషల్ జస్టిస్. దట్ రిక్వైర్స్ పాజిటివ్ డిస్క్రిమినేషన్ కదా, లైక్ రిజర్వేషన్స్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఫర్ దళిత్స్, ఫర్ ఉమెన్. Right, that requires special programs towards the aged population, towards disabilities, people facing disabilities. It requires more proactive approach towards dealing with special social groups like tribes, some of whom require to be left isolated, some of them require to be assimilated. Okay, so different approaches are required to realize social justice. ఇక్కడ కూడా గవర్నమెంట్ సోషల్ జస్టిస్ రియలైజ్ చేయడానికి రకరకాల పాలసీస్ని అడాప్ట్ చేసుకుందండి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ పాలసీస్ టువర్డ్స్ ద డిజేబుల్డ్ కమ్యూనిటీ, ద పాలసీస్ టువర్డ్స్ ట్రాన్స్జెండర్స్, ద పాలసీస్ టువర్డ్స్ ద ఎల్డర్లీ అండ్ ద ఏజ్డ్ పాపులేషన్. ప్రతి ఒక్క సోషల్ గ్రూప్కి ఏదో ఒక పాలసీ గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా అడాప్ట్ చేసుకుందాం. ఓకే, ఫర్ ఈచ్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ యూ ప్రిపేర్ ఇట్, ఫర్ ఆల్ దిస్ ప్రిపేర్ ఎ టెంప్లెట్ అండ్ హ్యావ్ ఎ మోడల్ ఫర్ ఎవ్రీబడి, so that you will have the basic information related to policies. ఏమైనా గవర్నమెంట్ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్, స్పెషల్ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ అన్న రీసెంట్గా లాంచ్ చేసిందా? ఓకే, పాలసీస్ ఏమైనా లాంచ్ చేసింది, ప్లాన్స్ ఏమన్నా ఫార్ములేట్ చేసిందా ఈ వర్గాలకి, అవి మీరు జాగ్రత్తగా చూసుకోండి. ఓకే, దిస్ ఈజ్ హౌ యూ అప్రోచ్ యాజ్ ఫార్ యాజ్ దిస్ ఈజ్ కన్సర్న్డ్, రైట్? When I looked at the questions related to this, I came across a series of, for example, look at this question. Women's social capital complements in advancing empowerment and gender equity. Explain. Women's social capital. What do you mean by social capital? Social capital ante? Capital ante enti asalu? Excuse me? Investment. Kada? Social capital ante? The investment that you have by building social relations, social interactions, by creating social opportunities. This is an investment that you make on society. This is what's called as social capital. Social capital, some social groups have very high social capital. Okay, ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళినా ఉద్యోగాలు వస్తాయి, ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళినా కానీ తెలిసిన వాళ్ళు ఉంటారు, పనులు చేసి పెట్టేవాళ్ళు. ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళినా కానీ కొన్ని ఫెసిలిటీస్ ప్రొవైడ్ చేసేవాళ్ళు ఉంటారు. Concentrate at getting at the big picture. That's what you should do. Okay? So in light of this, try to understand Indian foreign policy. Okay? So if you can do this, employ jargon. International relations could you should employ jargon. I told you the realism, neo-realism antaru, strategic autonomy antaru. Itla rakakala padalu unnayi. Okay? Try to use this jargon wherever you can, wherever it is relevant. This really impresses the examiner. He gets a feeling that you know the subject well. You have done your research on the subject well. Okay? So do that, and you divide the syllabus into concentric circles. First, India and its neighbors. Okay? అందులో నుంచి ఒక క్వశ్చన్ వచ్చే అవకాశం ఉంది. అందులోనే ఐడెంటిఫై ద మోస్ట్ ప్రాబబుల్. ఇవాళ రేపు ఇండియా బంగ్లాదేశ్ రిలేషన్స్ ఆర్ వెరీ మచ్ బీయింగ్ స్పోకెన్ అబౌట్. ఒకటి. సెకండ్, ఇండియా నేపాల్ రిలేషన్స్, దే ఆర్ ఆల్సో ఆన్ ద టర్మాయిల్ నౌ. Okay? So expect a question on this. India and its neighbors. India and near abroad అంటారు. అంటే ఇండియా అండ్ సెంట్రల్ ఏషియా, India and Southeast Asia. So what India is doing towards these regions, right? Next, India and major powers antaru. So India US, India Russia, India China, India EU, India Japan, 5 countries, major powers. Okay? ఇందులోంచి ఒక క్వశ్చన్ వచ్చే ఛాన్స్ ఉంది. నెక్స్ట్, ఇండియా అండ్ ఇంటర్నేషనల్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్ అంటారు. సో ఇండియా అండ్ WTO, ఇండియా అండ్ UNO, ఇండియా అండ్ షాంఘై కోఆపరేషన్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్, ఇండియా అండ్ అది ఉంది కదా ఏంటది, బ్రిక్స్. ఓకే? సో ఇట్లా ఇంటర్నేషనల్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్, హౌ ఇండియా ఈజ్ ప్లేయింగ్ ఇట్స్ రోల్. సో ఇట్లా మీ సిలబస్ని యూ డివైడ్ ఇట్ ఇంటూ 4 or 5 distinct areas, and then you concentrate on doing your work. Okay? Right? So be aware that you have to be very current in this part of the syllabus as well. Right? So this is how you get good scores in international relations. Just okay, so I thought I'll discuss some questions with you, but we'll do it if possible some other day. Okay? So this week the result is expected, right? So work well, work hard, work strategically work. ఒక ప్రాపర్ ప్లాన్ తోటి, ప్రాపర్ ఆర్గనైజ్డ్ స్ట్రక్చర్ తోటి వర్క్ చేయండి. ఓకే? Paper 2 probably is the most potential paper because with proper work you can get maximum result from this paper. Okay? ఎందుకంటే ఈ సెగ్మెంట్స్ అన్నీ ఒకదానికి ఒకటి రిలేట్ అయ్యి ఉన్నాయండి. ఓకే? అండ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ యూ లుక్ ఎట్. మీరు రేపు పొద్దున న్యూస్ పేపర్లో చదివే కరెంట్ అఫైర్స్కి సంబంధించిన టాపిక్ ఏదైనా కూడా యూ కెన్ యూజ్ టు వాల్యూ యాడ్ టు యువర్ ఆన్సర్స్ ఇన్ దిస్ పేపర్. Every day newspaper lo there will be one thing or another which you can use to value add to your answer in this paper. That is how much relevant paper 2 is with your current affairs. Okay? Right? So try to integrate this. Okay? As I told you, prepare templates for governance, for social justice. Atlanta vaatiki templates prepare chesi pettukondi readyga. Okay? And be very strategic and be very organized in your work. Right? If you have any doubts, you can ask me. International relations, any standard book with a lot of current updates. Okay? Any standard book will do. Vision material will be enough. Okay? ikkada ichche material kuda saripotundandi. Okay? And ARC reports, please go through them very carefully, but do a lot of current reading. న్యూస్ పేపర్లో మీకు కనిపించే ప్రతి ఒక్క ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఏదైనా కూడా మీకు ఎక్కడైనా యూజ్ చేయాలనిపించుకుంటే మీరు వాటిని జాగ్రత్తగా రికార్డ్ చేసి పెట్టుకోండి. ఓకే? అండ్ ఫీల్ వెరీ ఫ్రీ టు యూజ్ యాజ్ మచ్ యాజ్ కరెంట్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ యాజ్ యూ క్యాన్, బికాస్ దాట్స్ ద వే దట్ యూ షో యువర్ అప్లికేషన్ ఆఫ్ యువర్ నాలెడ్జ్. ఓకే? ఎనీ డౌట్స్ యూ కెన్ ఆస్క్ మీ. ఎనీ డౌట్స్? I tried to tell you some tricks about getting good scores in this paper. Truly, if you follow these tricks that I told you, you can get nearly 125 to 130 marks in this paper, which can be a very, very good boost to your chances at having a crack at the service. Okay? So work hard, Okay? This paper is a very highly potential paper. Anybody here with political science is optional? No. ಏನು మీ ಆಪ್ಷನಲ್ಸ್ ಏನು? ಆಪ್ಷನಲ್ ಏನು ಮೇಡಮ್ ನೀವು? న్యూవా మీది మేడం? సోషియాలజీ మీది సార్? ఎందుకు అందరూ సోషాలజీ మీద పడ్డారు ఎందుకు? వై? Sociology is a good option, in fact, one of the most popular options. All the best, students. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask me, call me. I'll be available here. You can talk to your mentors. They can arrange a small meeting in case you want to meet again some other time with some clarifications, or if you want to get your answer sheets evaluated. Okay? Feel free to contact me. Okay? All the best to you. Right? Thank you so much for this patient audience. Thank you.